Hello, welcome, and sorry. Happy Friday, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Maple Bitcoin, your three favorite Canadian Bitcoiners. I'm Jor. I'm joined by Rajat and my good buddy Forrest. And today we're talking about 110K, although it got to 111K Bitcoin. So that's the
112.
topic. 112. Did
Yeah,
it?
yesterday.
I missed
I
that.
thought it
Must
was.
have been
I
on the
thought it was
golf course.
just under, but
Was it just
maybe
under? I thought I hit 112. Oh, maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah,
Maybe I hit like
certain
111,999. Yeah.
Yeah.
Which should also, we should bring up the fact that it's 155,000 Canadian dollars, which not a lot of people pay attention to, and 16 million Japanese yen for one Bitcoin.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow is right. Like I kind of expect that out of some of the poorer nations for it to be like super inflated like that. But Japan, 16 million Japanese yen for one Bitcoin. Like that, just saying that out loud is just mind boggling to me.
Yeah.
But anyways, we're going to talk about a couple different topics today. We're going to start with the price stuff. We're going to get to a tweet from Michael Saylor about Pizza Day yesterday. We're going to talk about Bitcoin as a superpower. So in the last couple episodes, we've been doing something in the chat just to kind of get things going there. So today, what I wanted to ask everybody is if holding Bitcoin is a superpower, what is the best feature? What would be your favorite aspect of Bitcoin that allows that superpower? There's many of them, but a lot of people see it as a store of value, some as a medium of exchange, some as a technology. So let us know, because this is interesting feedback, I think, for us in terms of how people see it. So maybe just to kick things off, what do you guys think is the most important characteristics of Bitcoin that make it a superpower? What's number one for you guys?
I think it's interesting. The white paper talks a lot about it being peer-to-peer digital cash. It really talks about that medium of exchange, which is definitely a use case and definitely something that's needed. But I think actually the bigger use case is what we're seeing currently, which is store of value. The knock-on effects of having some of a way to be able to save your purchasing power into the future. The knock-on effects is, it goes into everything. It goes into the unaffordability of living. It goes into gambling in the casino of the markets. It transcends so many different aspects of the world, and there's so much. Like, we're very financially privileged being here in North America, whereas in the other nations around the world, they either don't have their own stock market, or they're not able to invest in other stock markets. Their own stock market probably has all sorts of different issues too, depending on where we're talking about here. But they have no good store of value, and then they're always fighting against their local and global inflation, which just forces them to work even harder and acquire less goods and services for it. So store of value is a way bigger problem than people realize, and that's where we're at with Bitcoin. And I think we're going to talk about that later on, of when does this become a medium of exchange, or how important is a medium of exchange. But personally, I think store of value, I think there's a cycle of money becoming developed, and store of value is really important to establish. And it's also a really massive problem that Bitcoin is solving. And Bitcoin's superpower is that it's the best store of value, I would say.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I think that store of value phase is really important for us to actually get to a medium of exchange phase at some point. And I think it's important to remember that these are phases. It's going to take time. For example, I think with gold, people didn't really transact with it for a couple thousand years, I think it was. They didn't start transacting with it immediately. Over time, people understood what it was. They understood the value. They understood that it was scarce, and people were okay with accepting it in exchange for value in other ways. So food, for example, with Bitcoin, I think one of the issues that we have today, if you guys have been looking at my content, if the audience has been watching my content, I post a lot about how real estate is a massive problem, with people borrowing as much money as they can, bringing their future consumption to the present to buy as many houses as they can. That's a huge problem, because we're seeing that prices keep going up. The expenses to own a house, most people can't buy a house. And I think the majority of price increases for everything are starting from real estate, because there's more and more value being wasted on real estate. There's more and more energy being wasted on buying real estate and investing in real estate and analyzing real estate when housing should just be a house. A house should just be a house, a place to live in. We shouldn't be thinking about what's the cash flow that you can earn from this property, or what the what the different ways are for you to financialize housing. And I think that's a massive problem. Can you just share my screen there, Jor? I
Oh yeah.
got I saw this quick post before from somebody on Twitter. So you can see here, June Marie. I received my tax notice from the city of Edmonton. My property taxes are now $1,342 per month for a 3-bedroom, 2-bedroom, 2-bath bungalow. 1 year increase of $230 per month for seniors living near the river value, and I'm retired. This increase is criminal and needs looking into. So I don't know if this is it feels like a scam, right? These people spent their entire lives getting to finally be able to own a house, and now who knows if they paid it off. I'm not going to make an assumption here. If they did pay it off though, and they're living on a fixed income, what if they can't afford to pay the property taxes on this house? And this is something that happens because of the fake money that we have. So Bitcoin, being the store of value, completely removes housing from being an asset, and we stop using when we stop using housing as an asset, it just changes everything. All these people who have spent their entire lives working, they can now actually make ends meet.
That's a crazy percentage increase. That's 17% in 1 year that property taxes have gone up. I mean, and that's completely out of their control. And that also lowers the value of that house, because now if they're trying to sell it, when somebody's buying something, they're going to price in how much the property taxes are and evaluate it based on all the costs associated with buying that property. That's really crazy. That's a really crazy post.
Yeah. And
that seems like a lot, but yesterday on the show, I was looking at the price of Bitcoin when I started streaming on 88 Sats Radio, and it was $35,000 US. And so it's in a year and a half, it's gone up 3 times, which means that if you were storing your wealth in fiat dollars, US dollars, or Canadian, any sort of fiat currency, you lost 67% of your purchasing power in a year and a half. So like 17% increase seems like a lot, but in reality, and I think that this is where there's such a disconnect, is because most people are still plugged into the matrix. They still see that inflation's 2%, 3%, 5%. In reality, it is significantly higher than that. And it's housing, it's utilities, it's the grocery store, it's everywhere. Everything costs so much. And the real unlock there for people is just, instead of storing your time and energy in fiat, just store it in Bitcoin. Everything gets cheaper instead of more expensive. Like, it really isn't that hard. It's just such a big leap for people who are still plugged into that system to believe in something like Bitcoin. But when you show them that, it's like very objective. You lost 67% of your purchasing power just because you were holding dollars instead of Bitcoin. Nuts.
Absolutely. Jor, we haven't heard your what you think is the superpower of Bitcoin.
Oh yeah,
curious to hear that.
I didn't even think about it. I was too worried about what other people and you guys were thinking. I actually saw a comment here, and this is it is something that in Canada here, it's not a huge deal. In the US, it's probably not a huge deal, but it could be one day. And Russ here said the fact that you can cross borders without divulging your assets, this is especially irrelevant in corrupt countries with difficult custom procedures. Like, that to me, I think, is the biggest thing that a lot of people, it might not be the biggest superpower, but I think it's the most underappreciated aspect of Bitcoin, is that it is the asset that you can truly own. And I think that when you have an asset like that, it really changes the whole landscape of incentives. Because I think that if bad actors, criminals, once they get to the point of understanding Bitcoin and that it's valuable, they'll also get to the understanding in the sense that it is very hard to take somebody's Bitcoin from them if they've secured it properly. And so in that sense, I see a huge decline in violence over the years. This is on a micro scale for individuals. It's going to be bigger for countries. But like, when you have an asset like that you can cross borders with, that you can protect without worrying about somebody killing you and taking that, that's a pretty big deal. Because we've been absolutely obliterated by what, not so much here in the West, but like parts of the world have just been obliterated by war and violence for the last, I don't know, 100,000 years. Like we've never had something like this before. And I think that having this now, and I was talking to a guy actually this morning, and he was talking about MicroStrategy and Bitcoin and how he planned on actually trading his strategy for Bitcoin, because Bitcoin is the asset. And he said that if he ever had to leave the country, he could do that with Bitcoin. That's what you want to have. You can't do that with MicroStrategy shares. You'd have a very hard time moving countries, finding a new place to live, and having access to those shares. That's a very underrated part of Bitcoin from my perspective anyways.
You can't do that with real estate either, right? If you have all of your assets denominated in real estate, where are you going to take it?
Yeah. And what you said there, Jor, is so interesting about how Bitcoin essentially raises the cost of violence, because there's not as much potential reward and it makes it more difficult. And if you look at the way nations engage in violence, oftentimes they'll engage with what they believe to be a lesser foe, because there's less cost to that violence and more ability to extract value out of going to war. It's why the Cold War was not, the Russia-American Cold War during the decade or the century of the 1900s wasn't a physical war, because there was too much cost of violence. It was too expensive because there was potential for nuclear war. They're very strong nations against each other. And then instead, the US goes on these like little skirmishes around the world where they can extract a bunch of natural resources and destroy a bunch and take property and all sorts of things, because there's less cost to that violence. So all of that extends down to the individual as well, where if you store your assets securely, there's less incentive for a violent actor to try to take that from you, because there's more cost to violence.
What do you think on that, Rajat? Oh, I like you here.
I completely agree. I think before this, it wasn't possible. We had to use either physical goods or basically just trust. And it seems like fiat is almost the trust side of things instead of it is. It's the trust side of things where it's all just debt. With Bitcoin, we don't have to do that anymore. We can use something that's not physical, and it can also cross borders. It just changes everything. I mean, the entire system is completely changed. The financial system is completely being challenged right now.
100%. And that,
I was going to say, I think unless everybody adopts Bitcoin, they're just going to become obsolete, right? Even banks, if they don't adopt Bitcoin, they're going to become obsolete.
Yeah,
I posted that
they are adopting Bitcoin.
Yeah, exactly. And I posted that the other day. I said I have more money than my credit union, because I do. They have fake illusionary money that actually has no value. Even if I had 5 sats, I'd have more than my credit union, because they have 0.
Yeah,
which is nuts. It's still mind blowing to me just how, we've had so many things in the news. It's mainstream. Like the guy that had the Pizza Day guy, Laszlo, he was on CNN yesterday.
Oh, really?
I think it was Anderson Cooper that was interviewing him about it, but like this stuff is seeping into the mainstream. I think that you guys can comment on this as well, but it really feels to me like people are starting to see the real value in Bitcoin. Everybody I talk to, it's no longer like a conversation as if it's like a weird thing anymore. It's like it's kind of cemented itself into society now. And when you talk about it, people will just say like, I'm interested in it. I know that I should hold it. I just don't have the time to do it. And I don't think we've ever been to that point before. It's always been, it's a Ponzi scheme. It's fake. It's used by criminals. There's all these different narratives. But I feel like right now that is changing. People are realizing that this thing is here to stay, and this is where you should be storing your time and energy in.
I've noticed a lot of people still think that you need to buy a whole Bitcoin. You can't buy a fraction. People, I think we're still in the very early stages of this. I mean, maybe because it takes a lot longer to go from 0 to 1 than it does to go from 1 to like 1,000, because it's much more difficult, right? The compounding that it requires. So I think we're a lot earlier than most people think.
there's still a lot of resistance. Like, people are waking up to it. People do realize, okay, this is something I got to take seriously, but there's still these levels of resistance that keep them out of it. Oh, it's too difficult. I have to open up an exchange account. I have to self-custody. Whatever, who cares? So, I mean, that's part of these ETFs is it's lowering the resistance to access, some exposure to Bitcoin. The other resistance too is just as you said, people think they need one Bitcoin, or just that they've missed it. There's still a lot of that, like, a few years ago it was so much cheaper and it's so heightened in price. Maybe it'll come down to those levels again. There's a ton of that. Like, maybe it'll just go down and then I can buy it then. There's a lot of people on the sidelines still not realizing what Bitcoin is and that it's basically programmed to go up denominated in fiat. So it's not going lower. I mean, it maybe temporarily in some cases, but over time it's going up. So you can constantly buy the top of Bitcoin and still win. So it just doesn't matter. It's not going to make that much of a difference if you're getting it at 10K less, or whatever, right? Buy the top forever.
It reminds me of that meme from The Simpsons, where it says, like, it's all-time high in Bitcoin for now, and then I don't know if he's spanking his butt or whatever it is, but it says no, it's the all-time high for now, essentially.
Yeah.
Because and that's why we titled the show today 110 Bitcoin, and we're just the beginning, because it is like it's an all-time high today, but in a couple of years from now, or even less than that, we're just going to keep going up and up and up, and that's what it's designed to do. I think people are starting to understand that. Anybody who's got like a toe into Bitcoin, at least, they kind of grasp that. But my concern is that there's too many people who are still too far away from that. And these big institutions are coming around quicker than the average person. And I think it's a problem, honestly. And I don't know if there's a remedy to it. I mean, we're doing our best here to educate the average Joe, average Jane. But I mean, I just think that over time, the people who are here today in 2025 are going to benefit the most. The people who have taken time to understand Bitcoin, time to protect that, everything like that, they're going to be rewarded. But I think society as a whole, based on these violence incentives we were talking about before, every single person on the planet is going to benefit from moving onto a Bitcoin standard, which we are. Like, people are still calling Bitcoin the future reserve asset. It is. It's just that nobody's come on TV and announced that yet. But it is absolutely the current reserve asset, and it's repricing every other asset on the planet today.
Yeah, the majority of people definitely need somebody to announce it on TV.
Yeah.
I don't think they're going to do it otherwise, because they're going to keep thinking that, oh, it's a scam, it's a Ponzi scheme, it's this, it's that. They're not going to. I feel like there's a group of people that's going to say that Bitcoin's a scam no matter what. It doesn't matter how high it goes. There, like with Peter Schiff, for example, the price goes higher, he says, "Oh, I feel bad for you." The price goes lower, yeah, I told you so. Price goes higher, yeah, you should sell. No matter what, he's going to keep saying that. But who knows? Who knows? I mean, maybe that's the thing that's going to be really special at this Bitcoin conference, where he comes out and says, "Hey, I actually have a stack of Bitcoin and I believe in it."
Yeah, maybe we'll see.
That'd be pretty interesting.
Yeah, that would be interesting. Did you see this comment from John Chess? U.S. Treasury confirms the end of the penny. I just looked it up. I confirmed it. They produced their last batch of pennies, the mint in the U.S. So, like, I don't know. That's just another sign of, like, the penny's been, it's cost them more to produce a penny for a while, and the penny is essentially worthless. Here in Canada, we haven't had a penny for a long time. It's been no issue. They just round up and down because those few cents don't make any difference with something that has been devalued so much.
Wow. Somebody said here, 1 penny costs 3.7 cents to make.
There you go. Yeah, it's pretty wild. And I don't know, it's like just another sign, right? And I think, to your earlier point, somebody needs to come on TV and tell them to buy Bitcoin and stuff. A lot of people have been doing that, but there's a certain amount of people that really still believe in authority. They have an authority bias, and they don't really, I mean, they might think about for themselves in certain regions, but with, like, finance, it's just too beyond them, and they just put that up to authority. Like, they allow other people to tell them what to do, and those people are probably shaken out of their positions really easily too. They don't have conviction. They might not learn, but those people are coming, in my opinion, because there will be more and more authority telling them Bitcoin's here to stay. Bitcoin is part of your portfolio, 1, 2, 5%. We've seen all this stuff happening. It's just a matter of time before more and more people allocate to it.
Yeah. I wanted to just take a quick break to mention our QR code. If you guys want to talk about it, we have what is it called? A Speed Bitcoin account or Coinos account?
Both, yeah.
So you can, if you look at the QR code next to my head here, you can scan it and you can send us some Bitcoin. If you find value in this conversation, we're trying to create as much value as we can. We're trying to help as many people as we can. If you find value in this conversation, send us a little bit of Bitcoin if you want to. We're going to buy a Lamborghini with it. And also we have I think we have, so each of us has a one-on-one session. If you want to join a meeting with us, do a half-hour, 1 hour call, whatever you want to do. They are paid, but you can check the link in the description below and you can find those links for that.
Good call, Rajat. I didn't put that in the show notes today, but yeah, you can find a way to get a hold of us on our channels. We have it in all our videos. I'll put it in the show notes after the live stream today. And
just find it. You'll find it somewhere.
Yeah.
And also that QR code is a Lightning address. So you have to send Lightning Bitcoin. I've gotten a few comments of, I can't send Bitcoin there. If you're trying to send on-chain Bitcoin, that won't work to that Lightning address. It's got to be Lightning, which, yeah, you can use all sorts of different wallets. Wallet of Satoshi here in Canada. I think Cash App in the States, Strike, they have Lightning options. And then
Coinos.
You can send. Yeah, Coinos as well. Yeah, which is a great one, but you have to fund that from an alternate source. You can't buy Bitcoin on there, but yeah.
And if you're in Canada and you're listening to this, which I'm assuming some people are, if you use Bitcoin Well, actually, and we have a referral link to that. So I will have actually, I should have had this before, but we'll have the one-on-one session information. We'll have the on-chain address. We actually have that for people who aren't on Lightning yet. I'll put that in there, and I'll also put our Bitcoin Well. So the nice thing about Bitcoin Well is they actually have a swap for free feature, which means you can swap if you have Bitcoin on chain, like in cold storage or in a different wallet.
Oh, wow.
You can swap for free, zero charge. It takes about 10, 15 hours because they batch their transactions, but I haven't seen that anywhere else on the planet in terms of being able to do that for free, because it is an on-chain transaction. Every time you're moving from Lightning to on-chain or vice versa, that's a Bitcoin transaction. So it does cost something, but if you're using Bitcoin Well, it's free to do. So it's almost worth getting an account just for that reason alone, because that's cost me a lot of sats in the past.
Yeah. The other services like Bolts charge like 1% to do that. So yeah, it being free on Bitcoin Well, I don't know why they don't talk about that more. That's such a huge service.
I agree.
In my opinion. Yeah.
That's massive.
I think it's because it's only in Canada right now, and they are still catering to both Canada and the US. So they're trying to,
right.
They don't want to piss off the Americans.
Right.
But since actually, before you said that, Rajat, some beautiful soul out there sent in 33,333 sats to the Maple Bitcoin Fund.
Wow. That's huge.
And since then, we've got 10,000 sats. Both these were anonymous. You can leave a message too that we will read on the show, on the live stream. So if you have a message to send, that's the best way to do it. It's very similar to a super chat, except a Bitcoin version of that. So we got 450, 1,500, and 5,000. And the 5,000 comment said, when Lambo. So at this rate, not too far away.
Yeah.
It depends how much debasement there is in currency. Those Lambos might get cheap priced in Bitcoin.
That's a good point.
No doubt. BTC Cowboy says, can you write the address? Is it the Coinos address? Yes, it's right at the bottom here, the one scrolling across the screen here. So
also, last promotion, leave a thumbs up if you find value here, because it really helps to push the video. YouTube pushes that out to more people if you engage. So we'd find that great. Good
call. Yeah, we want, that's what we want. We want this information. The whole point of this is to educate the average person on Bitcoin, because we, the individual, want to hold as many sats as possible. Every sat that you buy, every sat that you send to your cold storage wallet is a sat that Michael Saylor will never get, that Larry Fink will never get, that the US government will never get. Like, that's a big deal. They can't
I was
create
about to say
these.
that. That's a great point.
Yeah. Like, you have to think about them as like scarce real estate, in the sense that once you have that, once it's in your cold storage, nobody else can get that from you. And that's a pretty big deal.
Very powerful. Yeah. And shout out to Letha D in the chat there. She sent one of those 10K sats. Said she couldn't comment using Speed Wallet, but shout out to her for sending that.
Letha. Thank you, Letha. And sorry, this is the last one I'm going to mention here for now. Well, we'll maybe check in on this in a little bit. If you have a comment or you just want to support the channel here, you can. But we just received 100,000 sats.
What? Dude, what?
I have an idea
That's
of who it was
crazy.
from, but I don't want to say it for sure. But anyways, thank you very much for that. That is incredible.
Was it Michael Saylor?
That's crazy.
No, he doesn't use his Bitcoin. He'd send us a super chat.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, paying US dollars. That's what he said.
He sent us pizzas.
I don't think you can send claims to Coinbase Bitcoin anyway.
Oh man. Hey, let's talk about why we think Michael Saylor is wrong. What is he wrong about?
Yeah, there's a great tweet he posted yesterday. They had a big pizza party because of Bitcoin Pizza Day at Strategy. I think Jor's maybe pulling it up here. And yeah, pay with dollars, eat the pizza, keep the Bitcoin. In principle, this makes a lot of sense because it's Thayer's law, or sorry, not Thayer's law, Gresham's law. You're selling, or you're using the bad money, dollars, that depreciate in value over time, and you're keeping the scarce, valuable money that's going to appreciate in time. So this, on paper, makes a lot of sense. Now, I think I think it was maybe a misstep to post this, in my opinion, because there was a lot of backlash. And I think a lot of that backlash, personally, I feel is justified. And of course, it's just opinions and whatever, and people aren't going to sell. There isn't going to be noticeable selling of Strategy because of something like this. But in my opinion, there's a little bit of nuance here that should be discussed, and maybe one of you guys can take it and I'll share as well at some point. What do you guys think about this tweet?
I've really changed my mind on this in the last little while. Like, that's kind of been the narrative that I got into Bitcoin with, is that you buy Bitcoin and you never sell it. And I definitely have changed my mind on that. I just want to give a quick shout out. We have a new all-time high here in Maple Bitcoin. So just quickly, if you don't mind, share it on whatever social media you use most: Twitter, Nostr, Facebook, if there's anybody over the age of 80 on here watching. It makes a difference. So I just want to say, first of all, thanks to everybody for being here. But my kind of opinion on this is that I think that whenever you're buying something, we need to be thinking about this a little bit differently. Whenever you're buying something, all you're doing is you're sending value to somebody. You're sending value. And that's how I think that people should be thinking about it. That's what I've changed my mind on. And it doesn't really matter what you're paying for that value in. It could be dollars, it could be Bitcoin, it could be sheep. You're buying something and you're sending somebody else value for that thing. And this is kind of like my thoughts on it is like, if I wanted to buy a $30 pizza and I paid in fiat, instead of selling my Bitcoin, that's fine. But if I just held on to that $30, I could have just bought Bitcoin instead. Those two things are interchangeable. They're both just value. So when you're buying something, it doesn't really matter how you're paying for it. You're still sending value. Either way, it's a decision that you have to make. So yes, it might be a little bit more inconvenient to swap that into Bitcoin or pay in Bitcoin and then buy more Bitcoin. It's worth it. This is peer-to-peer electronic cash. That's what Bitcoin was designed to be. That's what gives it some more of its superpower, in my opinion, kind of rounds out the whole thing. And I don't think that the most influential person in Bitcoin should be telling people not to use their Bitcoin, because that's what it was designed to be. That's what it was designed to do. It's powerful in the sense that you can send your Bitcoin to anybody else. I could send mine to Rajat in Ontario, Forrest in BC. In a second, there's been people sending in value through Lightning throughout this stream here today. That's the powerful thing about Bitcoin. It also happens to be a great store of value, which is what rounds out the superpower of Bitcoin. That's what makes it such a great asset. But I don't think you should be telling people to never sell your Bitcoin. I think we should be using it as much as possible. And if you do use your Bitcoin, just buy more of it with whatever you were going to spend that on anyways. And I don't think it's so much about how you're paying for things, it's what you're buying. One thing as a Bitcoiner for me is I've really changed my spending habits. In the fiat world where I, used to get a paycheck every 2 weeks in dollars, I'd go out for supper because I had some money in the bank. I'd buy a new pair of shoes because I had some money in my bank, a new golf club. That's changed because that's an opportunity cost to buying Bitcoin. And so I don't think it matters how you're paying for things. I think it's just a matter of how you're storing your time and energy after your expenses. And I think that people should be using Bitcoin as much as they possibly can, because that's what's really going to boost this thing. And I don't know if Saylor understands that.
I have a bit of a different opinion from you guys, just to give the opposite side, I guess. What we see from Saylor here is just transparency. Other CEOs aren't going to tell you that they're doing this. They're not even going to let you think about it, right? They're just going to tell you, they're just going to tell you that they have Bitcoin. They're not going to say, oh, we bought the Bitcoin with US dollars. Because at least Michael Saylor is talking about using Bitcoin potentially as money, right? He's actually having the conversation where you pay with dollars instead of Bitcoin. Other CEOs aren't even talking about this at all, right?
No,
I
for
think
sure.
other CEOs haven't even thought that Bitcoin could be money. So I think I actually like this about him, because I think he's just telling us the truth. It's just with other CEOs, they could be completely lying, right? They may not tell us anything. Like, how many times have we heard, what's his name? The CEO of Apple. Apparently
Tim
he owns
Apple.
Bitcoin. How many times has he talked about it? And
0.
he's not paying for anything with it, right?
Well, he actually said on a CNBC interview that he held Bitcoin.
But he's not talking about it publicly, right? He's not helping. If anything, he's helping the wealthy. At least with Michael Saylor, he's going on X, something that a lot of individuals use who could actually benefit from holding Bitcoin. And I think this is just what's happening, right? Companies aren't gonna, if Bitcoin goes to MicroStrategy, people might be thinking, yeah, they might sell at some point. So I think that makes it a little bit uncertain. But with what Michael Saylor is saying, he's just confirming that they're never going to sell.
Yeah.
If they have fiat, why would they use fiat to pay for Bitcoin or to pay for pizza? Or sorry, if they have fiat, why would they use Bitcoin to pay for pizza? Right. And I think that should be the way that everybody thinks, because that's what's going to see. Right now we're in that store of value phase. So why would you use your Bitcoin as a medium of exchange if we're in the store of value phase, if people haven't had massive returns on their Bitcoin? So if you think about MicroStrategy, for example, they're up like 50% on their Bitcoin, maybe 60%. I think that people will start using it, even in the case of MicroStrategy. Maybe they'll never start using it, but I think people will start using their Bitcoin as money once they're up 10x, 20x, 50x. Because at that point, it's just burning a hole in their pocket. Otherwise, you can't do anything with money other than buying things of value with it. And then eventually, this is just going to translate to people only wanting Bitcoin. They won't want anything else.
Yeah, and I agree with you. I think that it makes a lot of sense what he said at this moment in time, because he's thinking about Bitcoin or even money's use case as a store of value, and how you would just use the lesser store of value for payment. There is kind of I'm sure this is a lot more nuanced, because he's also talked about how, like, he's congratulated Steak and Shake for accepting Bitcoin. So it's not like he's anti accepting Bitcoin or using Bitcoin as cash or anything like that, right? He's just saying, hey, this is the most important part of Bitcoin to me, which is totally fair. And they've built a business around that. There's also the technical argument against his position, where Bitcoin actually needs to be used on chain to facilitate the security of it. And that corresponds to it being a good store of value, because if it doesn't end up being secure in the future, then it isn't a good store of value. But I don't think you can say that in 3 little lines on a tweet, but the other thing, I mean, I'm not Saylor, but what I would just simply say is, spend and replace when you buy pizza, but again, not as catchy of a tweet, but very, very easy to do. Anyway, what were you gonna say there, Rajat?
If you spend and replace, you have to pay taxes, you have to pay fees, right? You have to pay the 1% spread. I mean, that just increases your cost of using Bitcoin. Unless, like, why would you pay more if they're not giving you a discount to pay in Bitcoin? Like, if somebody, okay, so let's say, for example, if if I wanted to book a one-on-one call with you guys and you had an option to pay US dollars versus you had an option to pay Bitcoin, and you don't give me a discount to pay Bitcoin, why would I give you Bitcoin if it costs me more to pay in Bitcoin?
Yeah, that's a really fair point. Very fair point, especially in today's age. But I do charge a surcharge for people paying in fiat.
Oh yeah, no, I get. Yeah, that's that's the way you should do it. That's the right way to do it, right? If anything, if the pizza shop gave him a discount of 5%, maybe he would pay in Bitcoin.
Maybe. And the other thing too, like capital gains is a big hindrance to the medium of exchange conversation. And I've seen a bunch of people comment about it in the chat. But in the US, there is a way to specifically use UTXOs and account for that. So you could buy, yes, there is still that 1% spread. So it does end up being more expensive to use Bitcoin, even if you were to buy and spend it immediately and the prices are the same. There's still that spread you have to pay, but your capital gains wouldn't be affected by that. But it adds a little bit of complexity. And I think the reason to do that is to support the network, to support merchant adoption, because this ends up being something we need in the future. And like personally, like I'm involved with a group here in my town where we're actively onboarding people as merchants. And the part of the reason that I'm willing to go spend my Bitcoin at these places is because in a scenario where I'm not allowed to use cash, I want to be able to buy things with my Bitcoin, right? And so it's to future-proof scenarios where Bitcoin is that use case of permissionless money is usable because people are onboarded and willing to accept it. So I think it's that mission to spread further adoption that's important with it being a medium of exchange. But there is friction to that medium of exchange happening, and that's why we're not seeing it as much, and we're seeing people talk about it more as a store of value, and it is acting much more efficiently as a store of value than its medium of exchange piece of that money.
Yeah. Somebody said there, you guys are missing the point that there's going to be a point when nobody wants fiat, and I completely agree. There's 100%. Going to be a point because it won't be worth it. Why would you want fiat? Because you're not getting paid for what you're doing if somebody else can just create more money.
Thayer's law. That's Thayer's law. When, regardless of legal tender laws, people are only willing, merchants and businesses are only willing to accept the stronger money as opposed to the weaker money, which plays out in hyperinflation throughout history. That we've seen that where the Deutschmark in Germany no longer accepted, or buy the wheelbarrow full to get a loaf of bread. But I'm sure people would accept, British pounds at the time because they knew that they could exchange those for value around the world, whereas the Deutschmark was losing value. So Thayer's law plays out after Gresham's law, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think that you see that around a lot of countries on earth, is that they might not necessarily accept their local currency, or they might charge more. Anytime you show them a US dollar, though, their eyes just light up. But why? Because it's the strongest currency. It was the strongest currency before Bitcoin. But I just want to go over a couple different things, because Rajat, you were talking about the PayPal thing there. And I think that this is my thoughts on this is like, I had a consultation with somebody this morning, and he's like, I feel really bad. I paid for the call with PayPal. I should have paid you in Bitcoin. I was like, well, I mean, it's value either way. I'm going to buy Bitcoin with it either way. But what we were talking about there, I said, do you know why it would be more powerful if you sent Bitcoin to me? Because one of the main concerns that I have with our society right now is the control. And part of that control is through companies like PayPal. They have too much power. And if people are sending Bitcoin instead of using PayPal for that, that reduces the amount of power and influence that a company like that has. And for somebody who uses PayPal and doesn't necessarily talk about things that the state loves, that's a real issue for me, because at any moment, PayPal could just say, you know what, you're talking about Bitcoin. We don't like Bitcoin. You can't accept money anymore. That's a problem. That's not a problem for every person, but it's a problem for me. And so I think that not only could he send Bitcoin, nobody else would know about it. He wouldn't have to put in his credit card information, banking information. It wouldn't show up anywhere for me. Like, that's one part of it. But just like simply taking some power away from PayPal, to me, is worth that 1 or 2%. And the other thing I was going to say there is that, for somebody in my shoes right now, I keep the majority of my wealth in Bitcoin. And so I think that if you ever have to, if you're able to pay for things in fiat, that means that you're short Bitcoin. You're not all in on Bitcoin. If you live in Bitcoin, then you're going to spend some Bitcoin once in a while, because that's where you're storing your time and energy. So for me, I buy things a lot in Bitcoin, or I use Bitcoin to exchange for fiat to buy things, whatever that may be. But it's because that's where all my stuff is. And I don't always spend and replace it, because that's just part of my life. I have to pay for things to live. And I use Bitcoin to facilitate that. So that's just kind of my perspective of it. I see what you guys are saying as well, but I just don't think we should downplay how important it is to be able to transact peer-to-peer without intermediaries like PayPal in this situation. It's a big deal.
I agree. But the point with Bitcoin, though, is that it gives you a choice. That's the most important thing. Everybody can do whatever they want with their Bitcoin. And that's the greatest part. With fiat, for example, we have no other way to pay. With Bitcoin, at least we have the opportunity to pay with other stuff. For me personally, if somebody wanted Bitcoin, I would pay them 100% with Bitcoin, right? If somebody doesn't want Bitcoin, why would I force them to take Bitcoin? And then they're obviously going to go and convert it into US dollars, and I lose, and then they lose. It's just giving more money to the financial services industry.
Yeah. Yeah, all good points around the board, and I think there are times when it makes a lot more sense to actually use Bitcoin. Like, I'm working with a filmmaker in Kenya. I've been sending money through these remittances services, and they take like insane percentages. And finally, I've convinced him, all right, if we're going to continue working, you got to accept Bitcoin. And then he's like, okay, fine. And they have a really cool system in Kenya. This is maybe a side point, but they use something called M-Pesa, which is a way to pay through the SIM card in your phone, and actually convert into Kenyan shillings. And
Wow.
there's this app called Tondo, and it connects to your Lightning wallet, like Wallet of Satoshi. And so when you transact with M-Pesa through Tondo, it immediately converts your sats into Kenyan shillings and sends it to the other person's M-Pesa account.
Wow.
So it's like this little intermediary. It's really great for merchant adoption. So,
hey, Jor, can you share my account, my screen? Yeah, it's very similar, almost exactly similar to what you were saying there.
Yeah.
This is called Matching Kura. This is another guy that I work with. He same thing. He was telling me about this. It's so cool.
Really cool. So cool that you can do that.
See,
can
that's
you just
the thing.
Explain that again.
So what you can do is you can send people Bitcoin to their phone number, from what I know.
This is slightly different from what I was talking about, but this is really cool as well. I know about this too.
Yeah. All we know is that in 10 years, this is just going to get better. 10 years from now, it's going to be 10 times better, 100 times better. You don't know what kind of innovations people are thinking about even right now, and what's in process of being built.
For sure. Yeah. Jor, what were you curious about there? About what I was explaining?
Yeah, could you just explain that the Kenya thing again?
Yeah, so there's something they use for payments and for storing their currency called M-Pesa, which connects. It's like basically an account that's associated with their phone number or with their SIM card. And by having somebody else's phone number, you can send through the M-Pesa network value. Like you can send Kenyan shilling, their currency. And so there's this company called Tondo, which has created a system to convert sats into Kenyan shilling and transact through M-Pesa. So if somebody holds sats on Wallet of Satoshi, connects Wallet of Satoshi to Tondo, somebody could pay with Tondo as if they were paying with M-Pesa, but it would actually be coming from Bitcoin directly, their Bitcoin account, instead of their Kenyan shilling account.
That's super cool.
Very
that just makes so much sense. I think that it's kind of crazy to me that that's happening in Kenya of all places. That seems like the world we're headed to in a lot of respects, in monetary stuff, but also like in tokenizing stocks and things like that, that you can basically decide how you want to be. That's super cool. And it's cool that they have that technology here, and we're kind of still in the Stone Age in the West.
Well, they need it. They need it more than us, right?
Yeah.
That's the thing. They don't have Interact e-transfer. They don't have Cash App. They don't have all that. Like, I tried to send PayPal to this guy. He can't get a PayPal account. You know, it's next to impossible. So he's stuck with these remittances things, and yeah, it's just a nightmare. And Bitcoin totally changes that, in my opinion. Such a use case today.
And any Bitcoin that he receives from you, it's going to change his life. It's like we mentioned before, you receive Bitcoin, and if you can keep it, you can basically set your own wage.
Yes. I love that.
Exactly.
Do you want to just explain that? I'm going to bring up this super chat. I see RS. I saw a couple comments too. We're not ignoring you. There's just a lot going on. We don't really want to break up the conversation once we're kind of flowing here.
Yeah.
So maybe just explain the setting your own wage thing, Rajat, because I think that that's a super interesting thing for people to be thinking about. And then we can get to this super chat from RS right after that.
So let's say, for example, if you guys send Satoshis to that QR code on that corner there, right next to my head, if you send Satoshis to that, and if we don't spend those Satoshis for, let's say, 5 years, you send us 10,000 Satoshis, and in that time, Bitcoin's price 10x's. If you send it, sorry, I think I said I think I said 10,000 Satoshis. So today, that 10,000 Satoshis is worth $10, but in 5 years, it may be worth $100. It may be worth $1,000. So what I'm saying here, where you can set your own wage, is instead of spending the Bitcoin right away at the current price of Bitcoin, you can wait and you can spend it in the future when the purchasing power of your Bitcoin has gone up and essentially your hourly wage has increased, because the amount of things that you can buy with the hourly wage that you earned years ago has now gone up. So with fiat, it's the opposite, where if you wait to spend your fiat, your hourly wage basically goes down because you can buy fewer and fewer things with your hourly wage. With Bitcoin, it's the opposite, where it goes up. With fiat, it goes down. So completely different systems. And like I said, with Forrest, the guy who you're working with, if let's say you pay him $100 a month, if he waits 10 years to spend that $100, that could be equivalent to $10,000 for him. And then on top of that, I work with a guy from Nigeria, so for him, their currency is decreasing in value so quickly that for him, if he waits a year, it's going to be 5x. A year, it's going to be 2x, 3x.
Yeah.
It really just, more so than anything else, as you were speaking there, Rajat, the one thing that stood out for me is that Bitcoin really incentivizes saving. Fiat really incentivizes spending, right?
Yeah.
Because there's no point of holding on to your fiat, but you don't necessarily have to say 10,000 sats in this wallet, I'm going to hang on to it for 10 years and then I'm going to set my own wage there, because that's almost impossible for somebody to do. But the idea is the same. It incentivizes saving. You add value to the world, you get value in return. The longer you hang on to that value and not spend it on stuff you don't need, the more your wage goes up over time from that 10,000 sats that you earned back then. So it's a super cool concept, and it actually really applies to what RS is talking about here. So RS says Jack Mallers said he owns zero fiat. Being Bitcoin only made his cost of living actually go down. I'm still having a hard time wrapping my head around that. I've only known inflation over time. I mean, that's a perfect example of Bitcoin just like flipping everything that you know about anything on its head. The perfect example of that. Literally everything you find, Bitcoin flips it on its head, and this is one of those things. So how do you guys want to tackle this one?
I just wanted to start with saying, thank you, RS, for the super chat, and thanks for your patience. We didn't get to it right away. We tried to, but yeah, we were on a roll there. So for everybody else, I mean, RS probably knows about this, but Jack Mallers, what he does is he just uses a credit card, and then at the end of the month, when you're spending, you have until the due date of that bill before interest starts accruing on your credit card. So it's basically like a free loan for a month. And then he pays his credit card bill by converting Bitcoin into fiat to pay that. So it's a really kind of a cool system. It's very difficult to spend Bitcoin, as we talked about earlier. It's a good initiative to do that, if you believe that, but it's difficult. Not every plate. You can't eat at Steak and Shake 3 meals a day, right? Well, I mean, maybe you could, but so this is his strategy.
What he does though, Forrest, right? Like that's what he does is he, instead of paying for Bitcoin to Steak and Shake, he just holds Bitcoin and pays off his credit card in Bitcoin. So it's essentially the same, except the business isn't getting the Bitcoin. Behind the scenes, Strike would just be converting that from Bitcoin to fiat and paying the bills, paying the credit card company that amount that he owes. But he doesn't have to hold any money in the bank because he just pays for everything with his credit card. And then he pays off his credit card bill using something like Strike or Bitcoin in Bitcoin.
Exactly. And what's really interesting about this, in my opinion, is this is full exposure to Bitcoin's price, because he holds Bitcoin for as long as he possibly can before paying interest, to do so, like before going into debt, before he's leveraging himself, basically. He holds on to Bitcoin. So he sees the max price appreciation potential of Bitcoin. Of course, it's volatile. It could go down within the month of him holding it instead of holding a little cash on the side. But again, he's gonna be paying capital gains, and some months he'll pay capital loss. He's probably strategically, buying Bitcoin using certain UTXOs based on that. He's not first in, first out. I'm sure he's not, getting taxed on the first Bitcoin transaction. First Bitcoin he bought.
Right.
He's not spending that one to cover his bills. He's probably spending the newest one, right? So his tax implications would be the lowest. And I mean, it's a very cool way of doing it. I think BTC Sessions also does, Ben from BTC Sessions also does something very similar, and is a way of living on the Bitcoin standard today. Big headache, I'm sure, for his accountant, but entirely doable with a little bit of forward thinking.
Well, Forrest, like, look at this comment. The kid said, so Jack has 12 taxable events. That's it. Easy peasy, which is true. You pay that thing off once a month. That's only 12 Bitcoin transactions. It could not be any easier than that.
That's true. That's not that bad.
And Bitcoin, well, I'm pretty sure they would actually provide your accountant with like a slip of how much you had. But yeah, Forrest mentioned there that there will be months where you actually lose in this. So it's not like a guaranteed thing that life's going to get cheaper every month. But I think if you do this consistently every month going forward, the law of the averages here, kind of like a DCA, you'd be DCA paying your bills off. You would win that over time. Some months you're going to lose, but some months your purchasing power is just going to explode and everything's going to be super cheap for you. But if you're trying to time it, you'll never be able to. That's kind of the point of this, is just doing it all the time. And you're going to win by doing that in Bitcoin.
And if he ends up having to pay capital gains, that's actually proof that it was a strategy that worked, because that means that his savings have gone up as opposed to holding fiat. That's proof that that worked.
Yeah, completely agree. Sorry, Jor, do you mind just sharing my screen?
I want to share this first.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
C90 said, small world, I too am working with a Nigerian prince. He has mentioned to me that there's a small hurdle at his local bank. But I'm working through that with him. He offered a generous amount to help him.
I'd be careful with that one.
Oh,
that's the comment of the day. Thank you for sharing that. Go ahead, Rajat.
So I just wanted to share one more thing with that super chat there. Part of what you have to really understand is that the cost of living actually does go down in terms of Bitcoin. If you save in Bitcoin, it's going to go down. So let's say, for example, this is a Big Mac index priced in Bitcoin. So if we get rid of the Big Mac priced in Bitcoin, we can see how the price of everything goes up. So if you're earning and saving in dollars, the cost of a Big Mac has gone up from $3.53 all the way to $5.79. So it's up 60%.
That's only from 2010 as well. That's when that started.
That's only from 2010. Goes. But keep in mind that, let's say if you get something healthier, let's say not healthier, but let's say you get something that's of actual value. Let's say you get coffee. This is what the price of coffee. Actually, this is way too volatile. I don't think this is the right example. Let's go with the
supply and demand of one commodity type index like that. Yeah, it makes sense. But the other thing I'll just say about McDonald's before we move on, the Big Mac has gone down in quality since 2010 as well. So it's not only just gone up in price, it's gone down in size and quality. And that's another way that inflation affects things like food.
Yeah,
so same with houses too.
Yeah,
right. So we have the price in terms of dollars. It's always going to go up. But if you look at that price, again, this is something that I try to show as many people as possible. But I don't know if people are seeing it. If you look at it in terms of Bitcoin, this is what it looks like. It went from 35 Bitcoin to buy one Big Mac to 0.1 here, or 0.01. And now it's probably just it's what, 5,700 Satoshis or so?
Yeah, it'd be 5,000 sats or 4,000 sats in Canada anyways.
Yeah.
No, in the US, I mean, sorry, it'd be a little bit more than that in Canada.
Yeah. So that's it, right? I mean, that's the difference. This is how you can see, because Bitcoin is a finite asset, and the value of Bitcoin appreciates as we develop our knowledge on how to make Big Macs easier and how to improve the quality of Big Macs, right? So the price in terms of Bitcoin decreases because Bitcoin's price appreciates over time. So when you think of it this way, over time, because Bitcoin has a finite supply, because Big Macs essentially have an unlimited supply, the price of Big Macs will always decrease in terms of Bitcoin because fewer and fewer people will have the amount of Bitcoin required to pay for a Big Mac. So right now it costs what? What did you say? 5,000 Satoshis to buy a Big Mac?
I messed that up. That's in America, and actually, it's
Right.
about that. But I want to make a point after that, Rajat, because I messed that up. But yeah, go ahead. It's about 5,000 sats.
No, that's okay. So let's say it's 5,000 sats. Eventually, 5,000 sats is going to be what you earn for a week of work. Are you going to be able to pay that much for a Big Mac? No. So it's automatically going to decrease. At some point, it'll cost you 500 sats. Then it'll cost you 50 sats to buy a Big Mac.
Yo, can you go back to just the Big Mac index? I want to try to make a point here.
Yeah.
This chart looks like the price of the Big Mac is going up, but the price of the Bitcoin is going down. It's the value of the dollars that makes it appear like the price of the Bitcoin is going up.
Sorry, can you say that again? This shows that the price of the Big Mac...
the actual cost of the Big Mac is going down. It's probably costing they're becoming more and more efficient to produce a Big Mac.
Oh, less in labor.
Less in labor, less in costs, more
cheaper
efficient
ingredients.
shipping, all of this. So it's cheaper ingredients, but it appears like the Big Mac is going up in cost because the dollar is weakening against it.
Yeah. So wait, let's take a look at real estate then quickly. So we can see here, where's real estate? House price. Same thing. The materials get cheaper, but the price is going up. But in terms of Bitcoin, it costs you 1.8 million Bitcoin to buy a house at this point. At this point, it costs you 4.7. Actually, right now, it costs you something like 3.7.
Wow. And then in 10 years, what will it be, Rajat?
I actually think it's going to be under
0.37.
0.37. Okay, actually, that's a good guess.
0.37.
Bitcoin could actually 10x in that time. And then at the same time, actually, Bitcoin doesn't just need to 10x. If the price of real estate decreases and fewer people want to use real estate as a store of value, then the price of real estate is going to decrease in terms of dollars, and it'll automatically decrease in terms of Bitcoin.
Yeah, I'll be buying a house then. I'll hold on to my Bitcoin. As Saylor suggested, I'll spend my dollars, hold on to my Bitcoin, and maybe I'll buy a house with it at some point.
Yeah.
Rajat, can you put the chart in the chat?
Yeah, for sure.
The one thing I wanted to mention on this, because I had that backwards, I thought it would actually cost more sats in Canada, but it's actually less. And I think that as Canadians here, I think that that's one thing that really messes with my mind is like we see as the price goes up, our dollars get less and less sats in return. So like 6 months ago, you could spend $1 Canadian and you get 1,000 sats. Today, you spend $1 Canadian and you get 650 sats. So that's the depressing part about it. But on the flip side of that, things in Canada, if you're storing your wealth, your time and energy in Bitcoin, things are incredibly cheap in sats because those same sats are actually worth more in that failing currency. They cost more to get Bitcoin, but when you're actually buying things in Bitcoin, they're way cheaper. That's one thing I've noticed in my life. It's kind of crazy to me. So again, you trade your dollars for Bitcoin, you get less. You trade your time and energy for Bitcoin, you get less right now. But the Bitcoin that you do have, the things that you're buying get cheaper and cheaper and cheaper. So it's kind of like it's really difficult to wrap your head around that. It was for me anyways. It still is.
Yeah, in the beginning, it's really difficult.
It is a win-win. That's the point of it, right? Because when the price goes down, you can buy more sats with your dollars and with your time and energy. But things cost a little bit more, or more sats, I guess. But the flip side is it costs more to buy, but everything around you gets cheaper and cheaper.
Yeah, I was at a Bitcoin meetup on Wednesday, and a guy pulled up this little chart that showed every time Bitcoin was hitting an all-time high. It was hitting an all-time high during the meetup, and they were all so excited about it. And I just said, "Hey, this just means I'm getting paid less." And they got it right away. But that's what it is. You're getting paid less. But yes, my savings have raised in value. My balance sheet, my personal balance sheet, has raised in value.
The sats go further with whatever you're buying.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, well, we're 1 hour into this, boys. I think we're going to go for about another half an hour-ish. We hit about 425 viewers at one point, which is about 75 higher than our all-time high. So Bitcoin's up, Maple Bitcoin's up, everything's up. Everybody's having a good time. Such good chats here. I was crying from that last comment. I want to say a couple different things here. Rajat, maybe just point to that QR code beside your head there once again. We have had some really generous donations so far. If you're just joining us and would like to support our channel here, what we're doing, we do really want to keep this channel ad-free, sponsor-free. We want to be able to talk about whatever we want to talk about, and that's a way to do it from the community here. So that's the QR code. If you don't want to scan the QR code, you can also put in that address there. But a couple of things. So it was actually Mark who sent in the 333,000 sat zap. So thank you, Mark. And it was our good friend BitBilly with the 100,000 sat zap for the Maple Bitcoin show.
Wow.
So thank you guys. Those are very, very significant to us, and we really appreciate that.
Yeah, thanks so much.
Sorry, we got another live, another.
Oh yeah,
super chat. The second one from Nav.
Oops, sorry. It's my first
Okay.
live.
So break down the HFSP concept. So have fun staying poor. Does a good salary without buying Bitcoin right now will be no good in the future? So I think what they're asking here is if you're earning a good salary based on what people think in general. Let's say you're earning, what's a good salary? 125K, 120K.
That's a good
Yeah.
salary for sure.
So let's say at some point you're earning 120K, and over time, your cost, it depends on what you're spending on, right? So it depends on how much you're spending. So if you're spending 50K right now and you're making 120K, it may seem great right now, but if you don't increase your salary, if you don't keep earning more and more, your cost of living will catch up to your salary. So if you're earning $120,000 right now, let's say your cost of living rises at 5% per year. I think that may be a little low. But $50,000 at 5% per year. How long would that take? Let's say 20 years. So in 20 years, your $50,000 expenses, if they rise at 5% per year, they will be $132,000. So at that point, would you consider 120,000 still to be a good salary? No. So it depends on context, right? So if you can keep your expenses down, if you can keep not spending, and you can keep cutting your expenses, you can keep eliminating enjoyment, then yeah, your $120,000 salary will seem great. But if you want to maintain the same standard of living, then no, not at all. You have to keep earning more. You have to keep improving your skills. And even as you get older, there's a concept called human capital. Have you guys heard of it?
Mm-hmm.
No.
So human capital is basically what you are worth. So if you have certain skills, what you can convert it in, what you can convert your mind into, your skills into, right? So if you wanted to work a job where you're making $500,000 a year, and you can do that for 50 years, what's your human capital going to be? Like $25 million. But if you can only earn $10 a year, and you can do that for 50 years, your human capital is $500. So as you improve your skills, your human capital increases. But the issue with the current financial system is no matter what you do, it doesn't matter how skilled you get, you're going to run out of energy. You're going to run out of time. So even if you are the most credentialed person today, it doesn't really matter. In 10 years, 15 years, you're going to get disrupted. You're going to become obsolete. So no matter what happens, you're going to have to learn more. You're going to have to spend more time, energy, and money educating yourself so you can bump up your salary, because your salary is not going to be enough to cover your expenses in the future. So what Bitcoin does is it gives you a way to store your value. So when you do become obsolete, you can actually still make ends meet. You don't have to worry about living too long. I think that's one of the biggest problems that we have as a society today. People are worried that they're going to live too long, because if they don't have enough money saved in retirement, they're going to have to work a part-time job. I've seen posts about people dying on the Walmart floor, right?
Yeah.
And that's really scary, because if you're 80, 90 years old and your government is giving you $2,000 a month in Social Security or what is it, old age security in Canada, and your rent is $3,000 a month, how are you going to make ends meet? $2,000 is not enough. And at some point, $3,000 will be your rent while you're making $2,000 a month. So how are you going to make ends meet? Either you have your own savings or you work. So yes, have fun staying poor. That is a very, I used to think have fun staying poor was just a way for people to make fun of other people, but no, it's actually reality, because on a fiat standard, no matter what, eventually you're going to become poor.
Yeah, it's a sad reality too. And there's this, you talked about the cost of living going up by 5%. That's there's sort of these connections, right? There's the debasement of currency, which causes the cost of living to go up.
Yes.
So there's this lag between all these things, and that's sort of the last thing to raise or go up would be the wages, because there's a lot of control and ability for the employers to not raise those. And so it's the furthest thing back on, or one of the furthest things back on there to go up with the inflation as well. So you're not, if the cost of living is going up 5%, you're lucky to go up 1% with your wages. Plus, you have to increase your skills, as Rajat talked about. It becomes this rat race, this treadmill that you're just always trying to catch up to the increase of everything. You're fighting against it, and life is getting harder and harder, when in reality it should get easier and easier, because everything becomes more efficient, and deflation, everything becomes actually cheaper, but you're using the wrong currency. So yeah, have fun staying poor is, it's a catchy phrase. It is sort of poking fun, but below that is the reality of, if you hold fiat, there's again, another Saylor quote. If you, we have a name for the people that save in fiat, we call them poor. It's a harsh thing to say, but man, it's a harsh reality as well. You don't want to be 80 working at Walmart as a greeter, collapsing because, that's just what you've had to do to make ends meet, because your savings didn't go as far as you thought they would, because they were debased away, right? Savings are the things that get taxed by inflation. And that's what people are relying on largely. And the inverse effect happens with an asset that's sound and has a capped supply like Bitcoin. So if you save in Bitcoin, it's going to go further into the future. It's really that simple.
I think this is a really interesting thought experiment. Like, I was thinking about this last week, and I did a show on it this week, and the show was 2.5 hours long, and I was arguing with the audience about it. And it was really hard for me to understand myself, but I think I understand it more now. And I think I have a clear picture of it. And I actually want to do a discussion in a separate video with you guys on this. I don't think we can cover it all today, but I want people to think about it this way. Let's say that you're very, very skilled and you're not going to be replaced by AI. People need you right now. You're in high demand. And let's say that you make $100,000 per year. And most people, aside from bonuses and commissions and things like that, most people get their annual bonus, or not bonus, but like inflation increase, which is also crazy to me. But let's say they get a 2 or 3% wage increase to keep up with inflation. So every year, even though your skills are growing, you're more experienced in your craft, because your salary is only going up 2% and you're losing about 15 to 20% in inflation, even though you're accruing more skills and experience and you're better than you were last year, you're actually earning about 12 or 13% less than you did last year. That to me is crazy. And you could argue different things with demand, AI being replaced. That doesn't matter. I'm talking about somebody who's very valuable. They spend an extra year getting better at what they do, and they take a net minus 13% pay decrease in fiat world. That's the reality.
I think that's part of working for an employer too, though, right? The employer is going to force your salary down. If you can work for yourself, like for example, all of us, we have our own one-on-one session. We've been increasing our cost over time because we have a bigger audience that we can sell to. Our skills have improved over time, so we're able to adjust our cost to inflation. And then there's other people, like you said there, Jor. If somebody's working at McDonald's, they don't have any power over their employer. They can't. If Walmart doesn't want to pay, if McDonald's doesn't want to pay them more, then they're not going to get more. So I think it's important to understand this, the have fun staying poor. I think it's important to understand the core principle here. Because if you're getting a salary, no matter how great it is today, can you share my screen?
Oh, yeah. But I don't think it like matters of how much leverage they have, Rajat, because even as a McDonald's employee after a year, your skills would still be more than they were a year ago, unless you're regressing. But most people are better than they were last year at their job, but they're still getting a 13% pay decrease net of inflation, which is crazy.
It's also about the pool of workers who are willing to offer you the same service, though, right? Like, let's say you work at McDonald's. Over time, the people who can do what McDonald's needs them to do is going to increase, right? And then they can hire robots, for example. They can hire, like, they've replaced their cashiers with robots, right? So
That's what Steak and Shake did. That's why they're able to accept
right.
Bitcoin now, because they don't have to train their employees to accept Bitcoin. They're just machines.
Yeah, there you go. So I think that actually contributes to it, where there's a higher supply of labor. So they can get away with paying people $7.25 an hour, even though people can't make ends meet with that amount of money. So over time, the number of people who are willing to work is increasing. But that also comes around with, I mean, there's so many factors here. For example, people coming from other countries, they're willing to accept this wage because they got so much less in the other country, and they're okay with having a lower standard of living. But if somebody is in Canada, they probably wouldn't be able to live on $7.25 an hour. Actually, that's impossible.
Yep.
Yeah, so I wanted to show this graphic. This is what shows you how little you can buy with whatever salary you have. Back then, $1,000 a year would have been great. But today, $1,000 a year, what are you going to do with that?
What's that worth? $10 now? 1,000 back then?
Yeah, probably.
Yeah, it'd be $10.
And if you compare it to the price of gold, back then you could buy 35. You could buy 1 ounce of gold for $35. Today, the same amount of gold is going to cost you $3,500.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, and sorry, Forrest. I just saw Forrest is chatting in the chat because I guess me and Rajat are talking too much here. But he said 8 to 10% inflation. I tend to agree in a sense of inflation, but like the example that I started the show with today, and this might just be like the time frame that I use, but I said like a year and a half ago when I started my YouTube channel, the price of Bitcoin was $35,000.
Mm-hmm.
Today it's $110,000, which means that it's gone up 3x, which means that if you were storing your time and energy in fiat instead of Bitcoin, you lost 67% of your purchasing power in a year and a half. So by fiat debasement, that's actually about, I don't know, 25 to 30% per year. You're losing there. Even though it's not like inflating, you're losing the purchasing power of those dollars that you stored it in. So I guess it's kind of subjective in that sense, but that's kind of my perspective of it.
Well, when you're pricing, because you're pricing it in Bitcoin, the sort of the like loss of purchasing power.
That's what I measure things in with. Like, that's what I think Bitcoin is. It's a measurement of everything else in the world. And fiat is one of those things. And just think about it. If you had dollars in a bank versus Bitcoin in a wallet, you lost 67% of your purchasing power. So, I mean, whatever that is, that's the reality of what happened there. So again, like Bitcoin to me measures things, and that's the measurement of debasement in that sense.
Sure. Yeah. No, I just think that, I mean, it's clear we're still on an adoption curve as well, which is pricing in part of the value of Bitcoin. But, you know, this gets down to another issue, which is that why don't we know what inflation is? Why do we have to guess? Why are we told one thing when it's clearly something else? Some number, we can make estimates. We all, all have different opinions on it. This is crazy. If you look at Bitcoin, we know what the inflation schedule is. I mean, currently there's more Bitcoin added, 450 a day. Yep. It's but all of that can be factored into the price because we know it's predictable. Why is there this arbitrary number of the Fed are aiming for 2%? That was just a random economist from New Zealand said, hey, that's probably a good thing, inflation number. Why is inflation not deflation? Why is it not even zero? But why is it not deflation? Like, it's just, this is so crazy that we even have to be like guessing at these numbers, Well, the numbers that they use, they take out like some of the key metrics, like housing, I think isn't included in, and fuel and things like people actually spend their money on. They just take it out of the equation. And CPI, like they also just change what, they make the housing footprint, like the square footage of a house smaller. They change it from steak to beef so that inflation doesn't look as bad because they're taking things out and putting in cheaper things. And that's like totally going to skew with all of the metrics. Yeah.
It's just how the system operates. They control it, they manipulate it. And that's why, you know, when people say that Bitcoin can't go to $100 million because we don't have that many assets in the world, that's BS, because the assets that we have, yeah, it's like that's in the controlled and manipulated system that we're moving away from. So that's why, to me, the only limit on Bitcoin is our imagination in the future, because that's what it really measures.
Yeah. Let's do the last super chat there.
Oh, we got
just because we have about 10 minutes left.
Oh, damn. RS throwing it down.
RS, let's go. Okay, so RS says, with the Bitcoin standard, can we see the price of goods go down while quality increases? Companies won't need to cut cost by cutting quality. They will compete for your sats because it can be debased. Yeah, I mean, that's the true state of the market, is deflationary. As technology improves, products get easier and easier to make, costs go down. That should be reflective in the price of those goods and services. It doesn't matter about the quality. The quality could actually improve, but with technology, it could still cost them less to produce those goods. So it should. In a free world, it is deflationary. That's Jeff Booth's whole theory there. I've learned so much from that guy, and it's really changed my mindset on a lot of things.
Yeah. So I wanted to share this chart here. I think this is a great example. So Hermes, the Birkin bags, people use them as investments, right? And the quality is the same. It's improved. I think it's probably improved over time. But you can see here again, same thing as the Big Macs, right? The price has literally doubled in terms of US dollars. But in terms of Bitcoin, it's fallen.
Wow, it's almost like the same chart as the Big Mac.
Exactly. Yeah.
Is that what a Birkin is? I didn't know what it was. I heard it in Shabuzi's song last summer. I didn't know what a Birkin was.
Yeah, it's a bag. It's a purse.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, it's literally like on a Bitcoin standard, on a currency that raises in value. It's the opposite of what we're seeing. Everything's the opposite. So we're seeing quality go down. We're seeing shrinkflation. We're going to see the opposite of that. We're going to see that companies are now able to increase the quality, increase the size, whatever it is, those metrics, and there'll be a competitive advantage for them to do so, because it also, Bitcoin kind of changes your value. Like, you're not willing to spend sats on something at the dollar store that you know is going to break, right? You're going to maybe just wait a little bit longer, then buy something of higher quality instead. So there's going to be all these natural incentives to go back to higher craftsmanship in all fields. I think it's really going to proliferate throughout there. Yeah.
So I saw this other chart. I just noticed they have a food price index on here. I don't know anybody whose cost of food has gone up only by 18% since 2010. Not a single person.
No.
Right. I think the actual cost of food has gone up probably 2 times, 3 times, 4 times. But then if you look at something like grass-fed beef, the price of grass-fed beef, that's probably the grass-fed steaks. That's probably like one of the highest end foods that you can buy. And in terms of Bitcoin, it's fallen. Unfortunately, I can't find a chart because this is CPI, but that's something that where quality increases, people get better at producing grass-fed beef. They learn more, they understand it more, and the price is decreasing in terms of Bitcoin. It's because Bitcoin is that hurdle rate. As long as your rate is lower than Bitcoin, then you're not going to increase in price.
Yep.
Yeah, and we're seeing examples of this in every industry, in every product, everything just keeps going down in Bitcoin. Like, it's not just over here, yes, over here, no. Everything is being repriced by Bitcoin. And that's why I said, like, people say Bitcoin's the future reserve asset of the world. No, it's the world reserve asset today. And it's repricing everything. If you look at everything through a Bitcoin lens, it makes so much sense. And it falls right in line with the free market, how it's supposed to be, outside of this control and manipulation that we grew up in. So again, don't wait for somebody on your television to tell you that we're on a Bitcoin standard. We already are. And the people who are here today are going to be the biggest beneficiaries of that.
We also, we don't have a free market. So how could we expect any of these numbers to be correct anyway? Because they're all being
Yes.
manipulated by different types of subsidies or different costs associated with it. I mean, I think you start going down the rabbit hole of Bitcoin, you start looking into Austrian type ideas of economics, Austrian economic ideas, maybe some libertarian type ideas, and you start to realize, okay, we don't actually have a free market in capitalism. It's totally skewed. Housing is, I mean, in Canada here, a lot of the new houses are built with some sort of government grants being part of that, and that just lines the pocket of all the developers. It's supposed to be affordable housing, all this. It just makes it more expensive because they're able to take that money and do all sorts of trickery with it. And then that skews the housing prices. And that's a metric that we measure everything off of. We have no good ruler because we have no free market.
Yeah.
So many good chats near you guys and girls. I'm just looking for a couple here, but where was the one I had? Do you guys have anything else you want to talk about here? I had one. Oh, right here. I want to hear what you guys think about this. Because this is, I think, it's in relation to the Canadian government, but I think that this is, to me anyways, if one country moves, I think that over time, all countries will move. Because if you think about it, this is kind of what happens in every aspect. People always find the most efficient way to do things. They find the freest places to live. And the more countries lock down and clamp down, I think the more people just leave. And you can increase taxes as much as you want, but the people who are actually paying those high taxes just leave. So it actually has a net loss for a country who does that. So what do you guys think about this question?
This is part of the thesis of the sovereign individual, which I'm reading now, which is that in a world of the digital age, which we're in, it's much easier to move. It's much easier to work from around the world, and it makes it a lot easier to move to keep your assets safe. I don't love being a partner, an investment partner with the government. Why do they own a certain percent? Like if you looked at, the capital gains and all that, you could say, well, they own that percentage of my portfolio. Like, why am I in a partnership with these people that I don't agree with? Other people could, like I'm here because my family's here and all sorts of different reasons, but it would make a lot of sense potentially to move somewhere else. And they try to control your capital. I mean, I think Clinton in the States introduced the exit tax. I mean, that's a way of them trying to control this exact thing, right? Through capital controls. But I think in the future, there'll be a lot of incentive for all sorts of governments, possibly the Canadian government, to remove or reduce taxes, make it so that you can, I think it would be really easy for them to remove taxes on a certain amount of Bitcoin per year. Certain dollar amount. You can spend $10,000 of Bitcoin or something like that without it being taxable. And then you could use it as cash. You could use it for part of the medium of exchange. And that would probably keep a lot of people here when other favorable tax jurisdictions open up, which they already have. And people have moved specifically for those reasons. People move all over the world to be more tax efficient. So I think it's possible. I think
they're going to just bend the knee because they're not going to be able to tax it. They're not going to know how to. Right? Like I think one of you guys were mentioning it before, if you move your Bitcoin to Lightning or Liquid, how does anybody figure out the transactions? Because it just makes it so much more difficult. I'm not saying that you shouldn't pay your taxes. I'm saying keep paying your taxes. But at some point, I think they're just going to make it's going to be much more difficult for them to track those transactions.
I agree strongly. And I think that I would say a couple different, sorry, Rajat, go ahead.
I was just going to say, so to them, it's going to feel like, oh, they're making a power move, but in reality, it's that they can't do anything about it.
It seems like they're starting to realize that. It's like even in the US, they took away their tax on tips. I don't know the ins and outs of it, but that's a pretty big deal. And But
even with those tips, who's actually tracking what cash somebody's receiving in tips, right? Somebody could just say that, oh, I didn't get any tips. How are they going to prove it?
Exactly. And the best part of it is, 90% of your income could be tips.
Yeah.
Yeah. I only get $1 an hour and the rest is tips.
Yeah.
They can't argue that. They might try, but there's no logical way for them to argue that. It's just such a subjective thing, what you charge versus what people tip. impossible. I mean, they'll try, but kind of what Forrest was alluding to there is, yes, in Canada right now, things aren't great. I don't plan on leaving. I think that Canada is going to be a superpower at some point in the future just because of our energy here, and energy is going to be such a big part of our future. But in the case of having to leave, if you have Bitcoin in cold storage and you have it secured properly, you can leave Canada and they can't do a damn thing about it. Whereas if you had money in the bank, if you had money in strategy shares, if you had real estate, if you had gold, good luck leaving and taking those assets without paying some sort of tax on it or whatever that may be. Because when you leave the country and you're a different citizen for the year, you actually have to dispose of all your assets at their fair market value, and you have to pay a capital gain tax on all those assets. Whereas with Bitcoin, if you do it properly, you secure it properly, they might know that you have it, but have you spent it? Where is it? Do you still have the keys to it? There's just way more gray areas there, I guess you'd say, in that sense, that it would make it a lot easier if somebody had to escape their country. But the other thing I was going to say is that we're coming to a point now where corporations are realizing that they need Bitcoin. Countries are realizing that they need Bitcoin. Individuals are starting to realize they need Bitcoin. And there's only so much Bitcoin. And so over the next 100 years, there's 5% of the supply that's going to be mined over 100 years, which means that anybody who wants Bitcoin, that's going to have to get it from somebody else. So if you have Bitcoin right now and somebody else is wanting to take that from you, they're either going to run up the price of Bitcoin and tempt you to sell it, or they're going to remove capital gains taxes just so it's easier for people to part with their Bitcoin, because the governments, the corporations, they need to get that Bitcoin. And I think that a couple ways to do that is shooting the price up and taking away capital gains tax so that people actually sell their Bitcoin so they can actually get some Bitcoin.
Yep, exactly. That's one way to get people to use it and to possibly acquire it themselves by that. So I got to leave in a couple minutes here, guys. We should also update the chat. I think you guys talked in the private here about continuing, but should we talk in the chat about our future videos and stuff? Yes. I mean, so for me, planned birth with my wife on Monday. So I'm going to be out of commission for a couple weeks, paternity leave. You guys are going to the conference. So I think we might, what are you guys thinking? Live stream wise and things like that. Maybe Jordy, you have some info on that.
Yeah, I think we're going to be taking next week off. Unfortunately, I really wanted to start a streak going here, but there's just too much going on. Two of us are in Vegas. Forrest is having a child. Usually, if there's one or even two people who can't make the show, we're going to try to fill the gaps and find some other guests to come on. But in this case, when all three of us are kind of hooped, I think we're just going to have to skip next week. So unfortunately, that's the way she is. But we do have some videos. I think we got 5 or 6 that we're going to be rolling out over the next couple weeks. So if you're, needing your Maple Bitcoin fix for the week, then you'll still get some good discussions from us, just not live. But
and you guys think you'll be back on the live, not next Friday, but the week after probably would be a way to go?
Yep, I will be.
Okay. All right, sweet.
I'll be good to go next week.
Well, Forrest is taking off. He's got to go have a child, not today, but in the next couple days.
And not me personally. I don't think it works that way.
Yeah. Contrary to the keyboard on Apple, Forrest cannot get pregnant. But so anyways, Forrest, we just want to say thanks for everything always. And we want to wish you and your wife the best in the adventure ahead, and we can't wait to for you to join us on the next episode here.
Appreciate it. Thanks, guys.
Later, Forrest.
Okay.
See ya.
See ya, Forrest. Okay, so Rajat and I are going to stick around and have a little fun, I guess.
Yes. Let's answer more questions.
Okay, so you got about I don't know. We'll call it half an hour. I didn't. I wanted to mention this at the start of the show today, but I almost didn't make the show because last night on my way home from golf, I ran into a deer.
Oh, damn.
So,
oh, that's bad.
I had to hobble this car to my grandma's, was as far as I could go. And then I stayed the night at my grandma's and almost didn't make it because I had to get a ride out to my house. So that's what my last 24 hours have been like.
How did you feel when that happened? Is everything okay?
Yeah, like I wasn't hurt. I was kind of in shock. That's what mostly was. So I think I'm still kind of running off of the adrenaline of it. So
Oh
I might
man.
have like a stiff neck or something in the next couple of weeks, but nothing like the airbags didn't even go off, but the whole
Oh
front
really?
side,
Okay.
like the car wouldn't start this morning. So there's
Would
something,
insurance cover this?
yep.
Oh, they would. Okay, okay. Okay. Oh wow, that's crazy.
So
Yeah,
yeah,
glad you're
I mean,
okay, man.
it was a freak thing. I was kind of driving and I saw one deer cross and I was looking at that, and then one came from the left side and just right into the hood and over top of the car.
Wow.
So it's pretty scary, but I mean, that's part of living in Canada, and living out here it's you got to watch out for that kind of stuff. So unfortunate, but glad that nothing was seriously wrong with me. Car's okay. Car's just a
Yeah.
car.
Yeah, that's the key. As long as you're okay, the car can be replaced, right?
Yeah. So yeah, and better than a moose or a bear. That might have been a different ending for me.
Yeah. Wow.
So anyways, we'll stick around for another half an hour. I would say we'll try to keep it under 2 hours.
Yeah.
But if you guys have any questions, any topics or discussions you want to have, just throw them in the chat there, and we can we'll have at her.
So there's this other question. Sats will always be available. Actually, this is a really great question. Sats will always be available even if Bitcoin is at $10 million. What are your thoughts on that?
So that was kind of where I went with the Saylor thing, and where I maybe wanted to get to is like, I think that Saylor's theory there in terms of spending dollars instead of Bitcoin makes sense if you can no longer exchange dollars for Bitcoin, because that was kind of my theory, that instead of spending dollars on the item, just use those dollars to buy Bitcoin and spend your Bitcoin. But that won't always be available. We're not always going to be able to exchange fiat for Bitcoin. It's just the reality of things, because fiat is really worthless, and it's going to take some time for the world to figure that out. But businesses, individuals, nobody's going to want fiat because it's not going to buy you anything. Nobody's going to want to accept that. So
Yeah.
I think for now, that's, it makes sense to spend Bitcoin and, but even at that point, let's say that you can no longer exchange dollars for Bitcoin. At that point, that means that the majority of businesses will be accepting only Bitcoin, right? I think we're going to move through this phase of like a lot of businesses accepting Bitcoin as like a cool thing, but then we're going to move to businesses only accepting Bitcoin. And that's, I think, when we're going to see mainstream adoption. That's when I think that people are going to be forced into buying Bitcoin. Right now, it's voluntary. You can take advantage of this superpower if you want to. But at that point, if people want to buy things at certain businesses, they're actually going to have to convert their whatever they have into Bitcoin and pay for it that way. So that's kind of how I see in the next couple. I think it's going to actually come sooner than a lot of people think as well. What
When
do
do
you
you think that's going to happen? How long do you think it's going to take?
It's really tough to say. It's impossible to give timelines, I think, but I do think it's going to surprise people how fast it's going to happen, because, we're not even at the steep part of this S curve yet, and that's coming. And that's kind of when I think it is going to happen. And that's when fiat all around the world loses all of its value. Everybody's flooding into Bitcoin. There's only so much Bitcoin. That's going to be a very scary thing for a lot of people, and a lot of very exciting times for people who are holding Bitcoin at that time. Pretty much irregardless of how much you have when that happens, you're going to be very wealthy.
Yeah, I agree. If you can just wait it out, right? That's the key. I think if you can get to, okay, so the way that I see it, I think eventually 0.1 Bitcoin is going to make you financially free. And then I think eventually 1 Bitcoin will make you financially free, then 0.1, then 0.01. At some point, people are going to be like I said, I think I said this before with the Big Mac. So the Big Mac is 5,000 sats today. At some point, you're going to be earning 5,000 sats for a month of your salary.
Yeah. So what will a Big Mac cost at that point if you take the percentage of what it is today, like 1 sat?
Yeah. And then at that point, if you have 1 million sats, what's that worth?
And then even at that point, it's not like it's going to say, okay, well, that's the minimum that we can charge for this is 1 sat. No, that's just where things really get going, in my opinion. That's when this whole thing really starts.
Yeah.
And then you go into, I saw a comment here about millisats, and oh, that's not the right one. There was one.
Yeah, I
but
saw
anyway,
it too. It was just a little high.
Oh, right here.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, so somebody asked about millisats or microsats, whatever you want to call them. And so I think it's important to know for people that there is actually no Bitcoin. Like, that's just 10 million Satoshis. Satoshis are the only thing that exist on the Bitcoin network. It's just Satoshis. And so there's no microsats, there's no Bitcoin. It's just Satoshis. So I don't think that microsats will ever exist on chain, but we're already seeing microsats in the form of Lightning. We're already seeing microsats in the form of sats per share for like the ETFs. That's how they display them. So like it'll say for one share in this IBIT ETF, that gets you 50,256.57 sats. And that 0.57, that's already the microsats coming into play right now. It's just on different layers. So it probably won't happen on layer one unless they change the code, right? Which might happen. I don't think it'll happen in our lifetime. I mean, if it does, that'll be crazy.
It could. Yeah.
It could.
But I mean, think about it. I think it could, because if fewer and fewer people, because more and more people are figuring out that US dollars are not giving you the value that you deserve. So at some point, let's say all these oil producing countries. So right now they could produce that oil and they could sell it to the Bitcoin network. Right? So they could get Bitcoin in exchange for that oil. What incentive? So they can, let's think of it this way. They sell that Bitcoin to the, so they sell that oil to the Bitcoin network, and then they can exchange their Bitcoin for US dollars pretty easily. Would you say that would be simple?
Yeah, I guess it depends on the quantity of it, but for the most part, it's still pretty easy to do at this stage. Yes.
Right. So at some point, so right now they can sell their Bitcoin for US dollars. At some point, why would they what incentive would they have to sell their oil for US dollars? There's going to be a point when that happens, right? Today, we saw the price of Big Macs in terms of Bitcoin. We saw the price of Birkin bags in terms of Bitcoin. The price of oil is doing exactly the same thing. I think the price of oil is actually worse because it's been pretty consistent over the last 15, 20 years. So if fewer and fewer dollars are being offered, or fewer and fewer Satoshis are being offered for oil, and they know that the US dollar is being devalued, then why would they want dollars? And I think that can change everything. So if they say they don't want oil, if that they don't want US dollars, then who else in that chain is going to only accept Bitcoin because they can't pay for the things that they need for in terms of US dollars?
It's a chain reaction, and I think that chain reaction has already begun. Like if you look at what was it, the bond auction this week, where the US had their bond auction and literally nobody showed up to buy US treasuries.
I think that happened, but I think it was just one out of many.
Yeah, like this has been happening for the last couple of years. Where
have they been failing for a while? Wow.
Yeah. And so what they did is, because nobody else wanted to buy their bonds, is they just printed money and bought bonds themselves. Like that's the system that we're moving away from. And that's why I have so much hope for Bitcoin, like big picture wise, is because that system is so messed up. It's done. Like none of it makes any sense. Once you actually understand what's going on there's not a single component of that system that makes any sort of sense. The only reason I think that it's still around today is because, number one, they own all the schools. They were able to educate people and pretty much put blinders on every single person who goes through the public school system, so they wouldn't learn about money. So they could keep this whole thing in the dark. And I think that that's part of it. But the other part too is that most people just haven't taken the time to learn about Bitcoin, learn about economics, learn about value, learn about all these different things and how applicable they are in this current environment, and why Bitcoin's not a want or like an investment. It's something that you absolutely need if you want to maintain anything that you've worked for in your life so far.
Yeah. And I think we actually added more value to the other question. Sats will always be available because at some point people will still be, I mean, even Bitcoiners, they're going to need to eat, right? They're going to need to buy shelter. They're going to need to buy clothes. They're going to need to buy cars. For example, your car, let's say it's a write-off. You still need to buy another car, right? And in that time, let's say, for example, whatever insurance payment you get, maybe that's not enough to buy another car because the price of cars is going up in terms of dollars.
Yeah.
Right. So you may have to sell some of your Bitcoin. Technically, just surviving, you're technically spending Bitcoin.
Yep. That's what I mean. That was kind of my point during the episode today, is like anytime you need to buy something, you're just sending value that you've earned so far. You're sending value, whatever form that's in. You have to spend money for your needs. I think the wants and needs are really highlighted as a Bitcoiner, because instead of buying that case of beer, instead of going out and paying $150 for a meal, I might just get a $20 stake and put the $130 into Bitcoin instead, because that's my lens now. So it doesn't really matter. It doesn't matter how you pay for something. It's what you're paying for, I think, that really changes.
Yeah, exactly.
Jay said, oh, what happened here? Jay said, is Millisat adding to the Bitcoin supply? No, it's not.
It's just splitting it further.
It's splitting it further. Yeah. Picture a pizza, and sats would be in pieces of that pizza. Millisats would make those slices even smaller. The pizza doesn't grow. It just makes the slices smaller. And we probably won't get to that point where it's like a mainstream thing. It's already around right now. As I mentioned, it's being used on Lightning. It's being used on the ETFs. But we won't get to that point until sats are more valuable, where, one sat, it'd be like a gold ounce right now, walking into a grocery store with a gold ounce, which is worth $3,000, and you have to shave some of that off. That would be like moving from a sat standard to a millisat standard, because that sat just buys way too much at that point that you can't really put everything together. You know what I mean? Like that's kind of how I see it. It doesn't grow the supply though.
Yeah, completely agree. Over time, we're going to be able to afford fewer and fewer Bitcoin, and eventually the price of things is going to decrease. So let's say today something might cost $500, and Bitcoin is at $100,000. But at some point, the price of that thing is going to go so low in terms of Bitcoin that you're going to have to give smaller and smaller amounts of Bitcoin in order to buy it, right? Because everything else is more abundant as the number of things. So I think one thing that people need to understand is that the price of Bitcoin increases as the number of things that you can buy with Bitcoin increases. So if more merchants are willing to accept Bitcoin, then the price of Bitcoin increases, because you can technically trade your Bitcoin for more things. So the market of things that are available to be bought for Bitcoin increases. And I think that's the key here. If the market of things that can be bought with Bitcoin is basically unlimited, then the price of Bitcoin becomes infinity. If you can buy everything for Bitcoin, then the price of Bitcoin is everything. The Bitcoin network is worth everything. I think that's a way that I look at it, and I think that makes sense.
No, it is. And as you're kind of in the real estate world a little bit on Twitter, anyways. I think a lot of real estate investors dislike you, but anyways, that's aside the point. Here's how I kind of look at it: is like, if you think about all the real estate people like talking about doors, right? Like, how many doors do you own as part of your portfolio?
Yeah.
How many doors are in the world right now? Like 2 billion doors, maybe. Some of them are worth more in different areas. Some of them are worth less.
Yeah.
But if you take that 2 billion doors divided by 21 million, that gives you a real representation of how much houses are actually worth in sats. It doesn't matter where we are today. If we measure everything in sats, and that's the measurement of the world, if that's the yardstick, then that 2 billion doors divided by 21 million, I think it comes out to be about 400,000 sats per door. And right now it's like 4 Bitcoin per door. So that's the lag here, is that people still have too much faith in that old system. People haven't taken the time to understand what Bitcoin is. So therefore they haven't added to the total demand of Bitcoin. And as the demand grows, as there's more and more people fighting over those scarce units called Satoshis, that's when it goes up and up and up in terms of fiat price. But that doesn't change. 2 billion dollars divided by 21 million does not change. It's still that amount in Bitcoin.
I just did the quick calculation. It's 1,050,000 sats per door.
Per door?
And right now, let me see what the average price of a house is in the world. Of a house, global. So the average price of a house right now, it's showing me in Canada. I think the average price of a house right now is probably around 1 Bitcoin.
No, it'd be higher than that. 1
Higher
Bitcoin?
than that, you think?
Oh, in the world?
Bitcoin? In the world, in the entire world, because you have countries that have cheaper houses,
Yeah,
right?
probably.
So if
I'd say it's more, but yeah, conservatively, that's good.
So let's say it's 1 Bitcoin. That means that the global market for housing is worth 2 billion Bitcoin.
It's overvalued, right? Yeah, it's way
Massively
overvalued right now. Yeah,
right. So if it's worth 2 billion Bitcoin for the entire market of houses, then if it's supposed to go, if it's going from 1 Bitcoin to 1.05, 0.0105 Bitcoin, it has to drop 99%.
Would it be? I
Yeah,
thought
so
it
from
was
1 to
90% drop.
So from 1 Bitcoin to 0.01 Bitcoin.
That's how much it is for one house right now is 0.01 Bitcoin, 1 million sats.
Right now it's one, let's say 1 Bitcoin, 100 million sats.
Yeah.
And then if you divide 21 million Bitcoin by 2
The
billion
houses.
houses, it's
Yeah.
0.01 Bitcoin per house.
Oh, okay.
Right.
I
So
was
it's a
thinking
99%
0.1, but yeah,
off.
you're right then. 99% overvalued. And
Yeah.
the
Or
crazy
no,
thing about that
not
is that
not
that's
99% overvalued. It's 100 times overvalued. So that's 99,000% or 9,900% or something.
right.
10,000% overvalued.
Holy. Plus, the crazy thing about this is that's in a world where only houses have value.
Yes.
That doesn't take into consideration land or
Yeah.
labor or vehicles or golf courses or commercial buildings, anything like that. That's nuts.
Yeah. So 99% if only houses had value. And
No,
then if you
99
have
times.
yeah. And if you had, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, like, I thought 99% too, but you corrected me there. It's 99 times overvalued.
99 times. Yeah. So they're overvalued by 100x, 10,000%. That's crazy. So that's the amount that you could lose. That's the amount that you stand to gain if you buy Bitcoin instead of buying a house, right? Even if you buy, let's say you put your down payment into Bitcoin instead of buying that house. So today, let's say your down payment buys you 20% of a house. That 20% may buy you a whole Bitcoin. So in the future, just that down payment may buy you 100 houses.
Yep. More than that, because that's only considering houses.
That's only considering houses. Yeah. Wow.
Wow. That's crazy.
Sometimes I feel like I get way too bullish. I'm honestly not surprised that the CFA Institute investigated me. I think it's just too much right at this point. Like, but it's the truth, right? The average person
Yeah.
can't wrap their heads around it. How do you conceptualize paying 0.01 Bitcoin for a house? How do you conceptualize that when you think that Bitcoin is nothing?
Yeah. And I think we should maybe caveat this because in that sense, like Bitcoin is significantly undervalued right now. Everything else is extremely overvalued. But as Jeff Booth says, I think it's important to note this, that this only works. This whole thing only works, the measurement, the technology, the network, if it stays decentralized and secure, right? Because if it becomes captured, that loses all its value.
But how would it become captured? I don't think it can.
Well, I mean, the internet got captured after 30 years. Like, I would say that the internet was an open protocol at one point, and now it's been captured by the Googles and things like that. It's a little bit different with Bitcoin because of the proof of work aspect of it, where you can't print money and buy out other companies to essentially control the network that way. But yeah, I mean, it is difficult, and that's obviously why I'm so excited about it, is because I don't think that it could be. But also, I'm not going to sit here and claim that I can foresee every event in the future and what that looks like. So I think it's just important to note that point of it. But if you assume that it is going to stay decentralized and secure, then this argument is very objective in that sense.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like
go ahead.
It's not me and you sitting here saying like this is just a big crazy dream. Like, this is the reality. This is objective math looking at it this way. And nobody really does that because it does seem so far-fetched. It seems like so, crazy and delusional to think that way. But when you actually stop and look at the numbers of it, it is objective and it is going to happen, again, assuming it stays decentralized and secure.
Yeah. Let's take a look at James's comment there.
Where's that?
In the starred comments.
Oh, super chat. Oh yeah.
Yeah. How long before we are Bitcoin rich? 10 years. I know no one knows, but what do you think? So let's say I think what you're saying here is in 10 years will we be Bitcoin rich? I think that's, what do you think? Is that your takeaway from this as well?
I'm Bitcoin rich today.
So, I mean, what he's asking, I get what you're saying, but I think what he's asking is in 10 years, will you have enough Bitcoin to just sustain your lifestyle? Of course, that depends on how much Bitcoin you have.
Yep.
It depends on what your expenses are. Eventually, it will happen. but nobody knows how long that'll take. That's really the hard part to guess. So in this case, let's say you have 1 Bitcoin. Actually, let's take a look at the math. Maybe this will be a great explanation here.
Nice.
Let me open my window here. Here you go. Okay, so I'm sharing my screen. Okay, so let's say you have 1 Bitcoin, and you buy $0 worth every single month. You don't buy any at all. Your expenses start out at, let's say you start out at $5,000 a month for your expenses. So you're paying $60,000 annually for your expenses, and your expenses rise at 4% per year. So today, if you have 1 Bitcoin, the Bitcoin will be worth today it's worth 100 let's say 108,000. So today the Bitcoin will be worth 108,000. I got to change this. 108,000. So today it'll be worth 108,000 in your portfolio. Eventually it'll be worth way more. So if Bitcoin rises, this is very conservative too. What would you
What's your
think?
rate here?
20%.
20. Wow.
I think that's pretty conservative, right?
Why so bearish?
Yeah. I guess that's true. But let's say, okay, so let me actually add a column here and we can discuss. So at some point, I added the wrong one. At some point, your portfolio is going to be worth so much more than your Bitcoin your Bitcoin is going to be worth so much more than your expenses that you're not going to have to worry about paying for things. It's just going to become extremely simple because the price of Bitcoin is going to rise. So let's look at this. So right now, if you have $60,000 in annual expenses, you have 1 Bitcoin. Your portfolio is worth 1.8 times the expenses that you have each year. Then next year, if Bitcoin rises at 20% and your cost of living rises at 4%, it'll be 2 times. Then it'll be 2.3. At some point, it'll be 6 times. Then at some point, it'll be 20 times. So at this point, in 2042, if you don't buy any more Bitcoin, your Bitcoin is going to be worth 20 times your annual expenses.
Oh, wow.
Right. So at that point, if you wanted to, you could do multiple things here. We discussed MSTY in one of our videos, which where basically you could borrow against your Bitcoin. You could buy MSTY and use the dividends to pay for your expenses, or you can use the dividends to pay off your debt. But you can also just start selling your Bitcoin if you want to.
Yeah, I think that's what people need to really, I would say, cement into your brains, because Rajat's assuming that you're going to have 1 Bitcoin or whatever that amount is, and you're not going to be getting any more Bitcoin, which, at some point, I think we're all going to look at our Bitcoin balance, and that's pretty much going to be the peak of it, right?
Yeah.
Because no matter what you do, you're not going to be able to increase that very much, but it's just going to go down because we do have to live. We have to pay for things. But here's what people need to know is, even if you did, like Rajat's saying here, have 1 Bitcoin and you just lived off of that, even though your balance in sats would continue to go down over time, your purchasing power would outdo that.
Yes.
So your sats are going down, the balance of your sats are going down, but your purchasing power in that same time frame is going to go up, assuming that Bitcoin is 50, 40, 30, 20% up over time, which I do think it will be. I think we're going to slowly go down, but I still don't think we've hit the peak yet because, again, the adoption curve, we're not at the sharp part of this thing yet. Yeah. So I think that everybody's saying that 50% is going to fade down. Yes, I agree. But over time, and I think over this next decade, it might get up to 50, 60, 70 in fiat terms anyways, in purchasing power. But yeah, that's what you got to keep in mind there, is that sats balance will go down, but what you're able to buy with that balance will go up over time. And that's how you're going to be able to live off of that.
That's the key. And then something else that I wanted to mention here. So if your expenses are converted into Bitcoin, if you look at your expenses in terms of Bitcoin, the amount of Bitcoin that you're spending each year is decreasing over time. So we can see that here. Let's say in 2031, your expenses would have gone to 75,000, but in terms of actual Bitcoin, your expenses would have gone from 0.55 Bitcoin all the way down to 0.23. So one thing that you could do is you could see what your expenses are going to be in terms of Bitcoin, and then you can add those numbers up. So let's say if you want to retire in 2040, you only have you stick to only 1 Bitcoin, you start spending your Bitcoin in 2040. So if you wanted to retire, this is how much Bitcoin you'd spend after you retire at most.
What is it? What's the amount?
Bitcoin.
I can't see it.
0.48
per year.
Half of Bitcoin. No, in total. So if you start spending in 2040, If you start spending in 2040, you have 1 Bitcoin, your expenses are going to go up to 108K. That's going to be 0.06 Bitcoin, so 6.4 million Satoshis. But if you add that up for the next few years, let's say you stay retired until 2151, you somehow extend your life by 110 years, you're going to be spending 0.48 Bitcoin.
Wow.
And that's with a 20% growth rate.
Wow.
So 1 Bitcoin, if at some point 1 Bitcoin is going to be generational wealth. We just don't know how long that'll take, right? This is with a conservative 20%. If you have that 1 Bitcoin today, and even if it goes to 25%, you can probably retire. Let's say if you retire in 2033. Yeah, if you retire in 2033, if Bitcoin's giving you a 25% return just over time, you're going to only spend 0.76 Bitcoin. That's with 1 Bitcoin.
So you still got a lot left, and that what you have left is going to continue to maintain, and the amount that you actually spend is going to get less and less and less over time.
Exactly. And then if
So
you delay it,
you play this out over 500 years, even though still your sats balance is going down.
yeah,
It's still going to be worth more and more and more forever.
yeah. Yeah. So if you delay it from 2033 until 2036, so if you go from retiring in 2033 to retiring in 2036, you're only going to be spending in total, if you just stay in retirement, 43 million Satoshis in total for the rest of your life. That's crazy.
Yeah, that's wild. And that's, again, I would say that although stretched over a long period of time, 20% might actually be fair. I do think
Might
over
be
the
fair,
next couple
yeah.
of years, it's going to be much higher than that. But
Yeah.
yeah, for like over the next 100 years, I think 20% is pretty accurate.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, let's say even if you go with 15%, at some point you'll be able to retire. 15% is extremely low, though.
Jay says this all assumes that fiat games perpetuate. I don't think that it does. I think that even if fiat were to die, the treasury, or not the treasury, the Federal Reserve dollar as we know it today, even if that collapses, people are still going to be selling things. People are still going to be buying things. And if it does fail, that means just we're pricing things in sats. I don't think that the dollar will ever fail. I think we're going to move to a different version of the dollar, which will be backed by energy, that kind of dollar. Just so you can build kind of layers on top of it. And so with dollars like that, I think that kind of extends our millisat a little bit. I don't know. There's a lot to think through there, and it's hard to do kind of on a live stream like this. So it seems too good to be true. That's kind of how I feel within Bitcoin for everything. It really seems too good to be true. But when you understand Bitcoin, when you understand what you're holding, and that's why I think that people really need to shift their focus a little bit from looking at the price, looking at streams that pump them up. They should be 100% focused on securing that Bitcoin. Because the longer you can hold on to that Bitcoin, that's what really matters. If you got a Bitcoin today, but you aren't doing anything to secure it, if you have it on exchange, if you have it on a ledger, single sig, in 20 years from now, that's going to be gone. And it doesn't matter how much you have today. So who cares what the price is? Who cares what this guy's saying or that guy's saying? You need to make sure that you have that Bitcoin in 20 years and 200 years. And today is the time you need to be thinking about that kind of stuff.
Yeah, at some point you're going to have so much Bitcoin, you're going to reach escape velocity, and the value of your Bitcoin is going to be so high that there's no way for you to not have enough money to pay for your expenses. Because there's going to be over time. Okay, so we keep thinking that at some point people are going to dump their Bitcoin. We keep thinking that at some point Bitcoin's price is going to drop, but I don't know if that's going to happen. I think it's going to keep growing like that. It's just there's going to be a point where you have even people who have 1 million Satoshis. At a point, you're not going to be able to spend 1 million Satoshis. That's probably for the people who, right now, maybe who are, I'd say Gen Z, Gen Alpha. They would probably be able to retire with 1 million Satoshis. Like for my niece and nephew, I think that they should have at least 1 million Satoshis. They were just born recently, right? So if they have 1 million Satoshis, by the time they're 18, that 1 million Satoshis is going to be worth a lot of money.
Yep. It's very similar to having $1 billion today. It's really
Yeah.
hard to lose and spend $1 billion. Like, I don't think people conceptualize. I wanted to do a spreadsheet on one of my shows of like have $1 million and what that looks like in one cell on Excel, but then times that by 1,000 and just keep scrolling and show how many millions that actually is to make 1 billion. It's very hard to spend 1 billion. I think it's going to be very hard to spend 1,000,000 sats in the future. And that was kind of my theory. I posted a video saying that it's going to be more rare to have one Bitcoin than $1 billion in the future, because people, let's say you have $900 million today in assets. As they continue printing money, the value of that's going to go from 900 million to 950 million to $1 billion. And there's going to be more and more people at that kind of level right now who will reach billionaire status. That number is going to go up. But the number of people who have one Bitcoin, whether they don't protect it properly, whether they start spending it on things because they had it for a while, the number of people with one whole coin is going to continue to go down forever. So billionaires are going up forever because of the money printer, and whole coiners are going to go down forever. And at one point, they will diverge, and that's when it'll be more rare to have one Bitcoin than $1 billion.
Yeah. And then because it has a finite supply, you're always going to run out, right? And no matter what price it is, if you have a million Satoshis today it's going to cost you what, or $1,100 to buy a million Satoshis. Eventually, people who are willing to sell a million Satoshis for $1,100 are going to run out. They're not going to be willing to give you a million Satoshis for $1,100. At one point when I was making videos on when I made I have this Bitcoin for beginners webinar that I made maybe 2 years ago. At that point, no, actually not even 2 years ago, maybe a year and a half ago. At that point, you could buy 0.01 Bitcoin for $360.
Yeah.
And today it's going to cost you $1,100.
Yeah, and we're talking in years here. Plays out decades.
Yeah.
Like in the last year and a half, Bitcoin price in fiat has tripled. And like we alluded to, it's a combination of the government's printing money and devaluing their currency, mixed with more people figuring this out.
Yeah.
That's what's driving this. And you think about a year and a half or 2 years or however long that was for you, but like play this out over a decade and then 2 decades and see what everything looks like.
Yeah.
I hope these videos never get taken down, because I feel like these are going to age pretty well. You know, people on the internet, we see comments every day. You guys are idiots. You guys are bozos, dipshits, whatever you want to say. But like, I love these kind of videos because we're going to look back in a couple of years and we might even be on the low end of things. Like that's how this thing could play out.
Yeah. Look, with the numbers that I was playing out there, that's with a 20% return. What if the return's 40% and it consistently stays at 40%? And that could actually happen, because if nobody's willing to, let's say, okay, so MicroStrategy keeps buying more and more Bitcoin. I was looking at the numbers. One of my friends actually, he gave me a huge response on why Bitcoin's going to fail. At the time when he sent me that response, MicroStrategy had 190,000 Bitcoin. Today they have 576,000. And that was only a year ago. That was January. That was February of 2024.
Yeah, I mean, like, even with that, like, just take a step back from all the crazy things we're saying right now. Like, just look at it this way. That Saylor, if you look at his chart of buying, when did it accelerate? It accelerated in November 2024.
Yes.
That's when there was a new administration in the US. Saylor spoke about this numerous times. It really helps when you have the government not on your team, but not trying to kill you. That helps. That makes things a lot easier in your life. And you have that. So Saylor just ramped up his purchases as soon as there was a new administration friendly to Bitcoin. But the other guy, Howard Lutnick, he's Trump's Secretary of Commerce or something like that. His company, Cantor Fitzgerald, $1 billion firm, they have half of their fund in strategy.
Wow.
I think it's 49% of their fund they're holding in strategy. Do you guys think that they might know something that's coming here? Like, just take a very logical look at this whole thing that's playing out right now. Do you think that and this isn't Howard's personal money, this is his client's money. He would not be doing this. He would not be taking that size of a bet if he didn't know what was coming here.
Yeah. Completely agree. It's so true. If he didn't know, and think about it, he's like an insider.
Oh, 100%.
He knows where things are going.
100%. He's in Trump's office every day. How you can't get inside of that.
Yeah. Yeah. It's
So I don't know. It just goes back to the fact that I understand that most people, the average person, just doesn't have time. And the reason they don't have time is because fiat is stealing their time. They're having to work harder, get less, more stressed, relationships ruined, crime up, food shittier. The list goes on and on. I get
Yeah.
it. But like at some point, there's got to be something that happens where people are like, okay, I should maybe spend just a little bit of time learning about Bitcoin. Maybe I should take whatever I have here and buy a little Bitcoin because this thing is not going away. It's not.
Yeah, you have no reason to ignore it anymore.
Zero. Even before the ETFs, like, yes, there was a little bit of risk there. And that's the conversation that I think of. And I apologize for people. I mean, the number of people watching is actually going up. We're 2 hours into this. I'm kind of looking at the screen here.
Yeah.
So we'll keep going here a little bit, but where was I going with that? Oh, financial advisors.
You're talking about the ETFs, the risk before it?
Yeah. And it's like for financial advisors, at what point does them continuing to ignore Bitcoin become like a liability for them?
Yeah.
Because it's literally their job to make the best decisions on behalf of their clients, and they're not doing it. They're not putting in the time to understand Bitcoin. And there's going to be a lot of people very unhappy with that. I don't know what the end is there for them, whether they get sued for, malfeasance or what is it, negligence?
Yeah, something like that.
Like they have a fiduciary duty to look after their clients' wealth, and they're not doing it. Like you objectively look at Bitcoin over the last 10 years, I think it's been the best performing asset by a long margin, average wise, but also I think 8 out of 10 years. Like how can you look at that plus everything that's happening today and still tell your clients that you should stay away from Bitcoin because it seems like a scam? How? Like how are people getting away with that still today? Like what do you think? You're a CFA. Like do you talk to people? Like what are they doing?
People aren't interested. That's the thing. I have a friend. I mentioned this before. I have a friend who he actually made a bet with me that Bitcoin is going to it's going below $1,000. And this was when FTX had collapsed. So at the time, obviously Bitcoin was at 15,700, 15,600, whatever. And he made the bet at the very bottom. And I keep telling him, hey, you can cancel out on the bet. I'm giving you an out. And he says no. It is going to zero. He strongly believes it.
That's an ego thing though.
That's it. And I told him that. I was like, "Hey, your ego is just way too big." And he's like, "No, that's not my ego. That's just reality." No, the reality is that the price of this thing is going up. It's been going up. It's up since we made that bet. It's up almost 100K. And he's still not getting it.
I don't know what the answer is either. I spend a lot of my time and energy thinking about this kind of stuff, but at some point you just have to say, you know what? I did all that I could. I've spent more than enough energy. And I think we're kind of taking the right approach to this. Like we're talking to people who actually want to learn about it, right? Like we've been on here for 2 hours and 7 minutes here. We're not being paid by anybody. We don't have any sponsors on the show. I mean, we have some very generous donors. There's no doubt about that. But at the same time, we didn't know those were going to be here, right? Like we didn't show up knowing that those sats were going to come our way, but we're doing everything we can to try to help people who want to be helped. I think that's the key. And I think that the deeper you get into Bitcoin, the more you understand it. Just focus 100% of your time, not 98, not 99, but focus 100% of your time on people who actually want to listen. Because the people who don't want to listen, like Rajat's friend there, you're just wasting your time. And that's a sin to me.
Yeah. I actually have so I have a community where I post about Bitcoin regularly. We talk about it. We have live sessions. You have your own as well. You have your Patreon. So if anybody wants to join those, we have more content on that. But my point here is that even the people in those communities, they're seeing their wealth just completely change. They're seeing their
Yes.
lives change. Like there are people on there who started buying Bitcoin back when it was 15K, 16K. They're seeing their lives completely change. I've had people who have been following me since back then. When I started posting about Bitcoin, I think it was about 30,000 or so when I started posting about it. Their lives are changing. They're putting significant amount of money. I think significant amounts of money into Bitcoin, and they're seeing their wealth increase when at some point that wasn't even something they'd imagined. And you're probably seeing exactly the same thing from people in your community, right? We're both seeing that. We're helping the people who are actually willing to listen, but then the people who aren't willing to listen, they're not taking action. And so when I started posting about Bitcoin on Instagram, I had about 110,000 subscribers or followers. And as soon as I started posting about Instagram, yeah. So as soon as I started posting about Bitcoin, 15,000 followers unsubscribed or unfollowed.
People don't want to be saved.
Yeah, they don't want to, because they just think that they just think that this is a scam because they don't understand it, and they haven't put in the time to understand it. And then the people who they do trust think that it's, for example, who doesn't trust Warren Buffett? He's an old guy. He's been one of the best investors in the world, and he's saying that's rat poison. So they're just thinking, yeah, what if I just listen to this guy? He has experience. He knows this. He knows that. But he doesn't understand digital money. His entire life hasn't been on the internet. For example, we spend how much of your time do you spend on the internet every day?
Too
Probably
much.
a significant amount, right? So you understand the value of storing value digitally.
Right.
How would he understand it? He's benefited from the current system, so why would he want to have people go on the Bitcoin standard? He wants people to continue buying his bags. If people stop buying the stocks, so he has what, $300 billion worth of US dollars at Berkshire. If people suddenly stop expecting, if people suddenly stop accepting US dollars, his entire life's work goes to zero. So he has a benefit. He has an incentive to get you to not trust Bitcoin. So think of it that way. That's his benefit. He likes that you're not trusting Bitcoin. He likes that you don't understand Bitcoin. You have to think of it from the perspective of the banks as well. They can charge you fees for keeping your money in the bank. They want those fees. They don't want you to go to Bitcoin because Bitcoin is a way better system. So when you think of it from that perspective, people will keep talking shit to us. They'll keep telling us that we don't know what we're talking about. We're idiots. We're stupid. We're this. We're that. We're dipshits, like you said before. That's exactly what's happening, right? But those people who are saying that, they're losing out.
Yeah, and I think for me, it's somebody like Buffett. Like, think about your own life. Like, Warren Buffett is managing a $1 billion firm. He doesn't have a whole lot of time in the day. Think about what Warren Buffett's day would look like. Just take a second and just think about what his day would look like. I mean, he probably's at the point now where he has more free time to do, he's 90 years old, so he probably doesn't in it as much as he was. But like, people in that world, they just don't have time for it. And I think the one thing that I'm learning here, just listening to, you talk in this conversation here, is like, Bitcoin rewards people who have balls, people who take a risk.
Yeah.
Because if you're still living in the fiat world, you don't have time to learn about Bitcoin. And if you don't learn about Bitcoin, you're never going to understand what's going on here. And you can't do two things at once. You either understand what's happening here and you just go all in on Bitcoin. You don't have to quit your job. That's a little extreme, but like, that's what Bitcoin rewards. It rewards people who are adding value and continuing to learn instead of just be complacent with the system that is clearly broken. There's no hope to fix it. And the longer you stay in that system, the more that you're going to lose. Whereas Bitcoin rewards people who have a set of balls. And I know there's a lot of women out there who are Bitcoiners. There's probably some in the chat today. But like, that's not what I mean here. It's like, you have to have some stones. You have to take that risk, and Bitcoin rewards you for that.
Yeah. Yeah. If you don't, there's this really great quote from a rap song. I'm sure people can probably relate to it. Scared money don't make no money. And that's absolutely true. If you're scared, so I was thinking of a concept. You either risk your money or your life. People are way too okay with risking their life. They don't want to give their money away to put into assets. They don't want to buy stocks. They don't want to buy real estate. They don't want to buy Bitcoin. So they're literally risking their lives. Their lives are going to zero. Their lives are trending to zero in terms of Bitcoin because they're not willing to take the risk. So either you risk these pieces of paper that you can get for your for your labor. You can monetize your labor. You can buy pieces of paper with it, and you can risk those pieces of paper and they can be printed out of nothing. But people are scared to risk those pieces of paper. So what they're doing is they're storing those pieces of paper, and their wealth is being extracted from them by the wealthy. And that's just it's heartbreaking.
It is. It really is. And I think that, you know, some Bitcoiners might get into this thing for the number go up, but I haven't really noticed that myself. And as I was kind of going through my own Bitcoin journey, that's the one thing that really stood out and what made me kind of lean towards more of the Bitcoin side of things. I see Bitcoin just like politics, where there's left and there's right, there's red and there's blue, there's Bitcoin and there's crypto. I lean obviously much further to Bitcoin, but the reason I do now is because I could sense from Bitcoiners is they didn't want just their dollar, their bank account to go up. They wanted the world to change. They're tired of the system that we came from, and they want to do something about that. And, you know, it's easy for me to sit here and say that as somebody who talks about that, but that's the people that I respected. That's the people that I wanted to become. And I think that you'd probably say the same. Otherwise you wouldn't spend so much of your precious life doing things like this and talking to people. But it is, yeah, it's just, I get a different sense from Bitcoin, and it is much more than just a currency. It's much more than a store of value. I really think that Bitcoin changes every cell in your whole body, whether you really realize it or not, but it'll stretch over the long term, like your eating habits, spirituality wise. Obviously you're financially better, which means that you're fighting less with your spouse.
Yeah.
You can move to a different world where you feel, or a different place where you feel more comfortable. There's less crime. Like, Bitcoin's going to reward you for going all in on it. I think that that's kind of the main takeaway for me anyways.
Yeah. I think there's, if somebody just randomly puts some random topic in the chart, we can probably find a way to link it to Bitcoin. Right? I think
you're
we
right.
could, right? We could find some way to link it to Bitcoin, some way. If somebody just mentions diabetes, okay, how does diabetes happen? Companies are trying to make a profit. They need to pay their shareholders. Over time, the raw materials that they put into their food is getting more and more expensive. So what they need to do is they need to find lower quality foods or lower quality ingredients to put into their foods. And those lower quality ingredients are destroying our health. With Bitcoin, they can save instead of having to pay for these low quality materials and putting into the food. They can save with Bitcoin, and they can, the purchasing power that they have will continue to increase and continue to increase, and they'll be able to increase the quality of our foods. So that's just me talking right off the top of my head about how Bitcoin can solve diabetes.
Yeah.
Right. So if they save, they can increase the quality of the food. We're going to have less sugar. We're going to have less quality or less low quality ingredients in our
Preservatives.
foods. And our health is going to improve. Right. And that's just one random topic. If we talk about other topics, I'm sure 100% we can find a way to link it back to Bitcoin.
Yeah. I mean, if you think about it, like from the preservative sense there, it's like they tell us the inflation is 5%. Let's just go with that, assume that that's somewhat accurate. 5%, they need to keep that number there. They can't see it go to 10%, 15%, because then people lose faith in their system. So they need to keep it at 5%. And how do they keep it at 5%? They find lower input costs, so they don't have to raise their prices. If we had the exact same ingredients as 50 years ago, our food would be 10x what it is today.
Yeah.
But they just keep lowering the quality ingredients because they have to find ways to make it cheaper and cheaper to mask that inflation and how expensive things really are of quality. That's the thing, is it's the quality. It doesn't matter if it's only gone up 5%. The quality is shrinking every year. So that gap just keeps growing, and there's really no way for that to turn around. And that's just how I see that whole system, is it just keeps growing. The debt keeps growing. The interest keeps growing. The dollars keep growing. They tell us there's this amount of dollars, but it's never been audited. How many are actually out there? There's no way to fix that system. And so if you agree with me there, maybe Bitcoin is the solution, because there's literally no way for that other system to turn around and do a 180. There's zero chance of that. I'm not saying it's 100% that the Bitcoin is the answer, but I do know that it's 0% chance that that system saves itself somehow.
Yeah. So somebody said, I'm not even a supporter about gay rights in relation to Bitcoin. Bitcoin's neutral. It doesn't care. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you're gay, who you like, who you care about. It doesn't matter.
Oh,
regardless of what happens, Bitcoin will be a way for you to store value.
Yeah. And the thing I was going to say there is that I think if you took a poll, I think that there would be a very, very, very low amount of people who actually are against gay rights. I think that our governments make that like a big thing. It's like, I remember watching a Minnesota Twins game one time, and there was a big ad in the outfield. It said, "End racism." And I'm like, what? That ad just made me think of racism. Up until I saw that sign, I wasn't thinking about racism myself. You just brought that into my life, brought that into my world. And I feel like governments do the exact same thing with, gay rights, with whatever you want to go road you want to go down. They use that to divide people, because when they keep people divided, it keeps them from coming together. Because when all humans realize that we are all just human beings, and if we all work together in the same direction, we can actually progress as a species. And that's the one thing that's been keeping us back, is all this division, which is pushed by the governments who want to maintain their control. So that's kind of how I see Bitcoin fitting into something like that, where all this division is artificially created by the governments who want to keep people separated.
Also, it's not virtue signaling. It's just us telling you we don't care.
Exactly.
We just, like, I don't care what you do in your house. Why would I care? Right? It doesn't matter to me. I think the most important thing is, just let people do what they're doing, right? They do what they want to, you do what you want to. If they're not interfering with you, then that's fine, right? If somebody wants to eat something, then I'm okay with them eating it.
100%. Do it in your house. Don't force it down my throat.
Right.
Shredded at 60 says, "Oh boy, there are no races, just the human race." That's how I see it. And I think if everybody just looked at the world through that lens of, we're all just human beings, we're all going through this weird thing together, and we actually put our energy directed in the same way. And that's kind of how I see things evolving into right now. I think that that's what's happening, is instead of like clashing with each other, countries, races, whatever you want to call it, when people are fighting, they're not doing anything. They're not moving forward. But we're all just humans. We're all just one. I really believe in and we're getting kind of deep here, but like, I believe that we are all just one. And if you look at somebody is exactly like you, then you're not going to hurt them. You're not going to harm them. You're not going to insult them. They are just you. We are, and I think that's governments have intentionally divided people for that reason, to maintain their control of the corrupt system that we're moving away from here. So that's why I think that Bitcoin really brings people together. It allows everybody to participate in the system who wants to. The Bitcoin blockchain itself keeps track of all the transactions. It's transparent, so anybody can audit it at any time. It's truth. It's everything. So that's one component of it. But yeah.
So there was one comment here. It said, because we're being forced to expose our children to it. I think that's part of fiat. Right?
Where was that?
So just a little bit about from Shredded at 60. He said we're forced to expose our children to it. That's part of fiat, right? That's what fiat does. It forces you to do things that you don't want to. Like with Bitcoin, you have the choice to. Okay, so let's go into this other rabbit hole. If you have Bitcoin, you can send your kids to private school. You can give them the values that you want to, and you don't have to expose them to the stuff that the public school system exposes them to. So I think Bitcoin fixes this, right? So it won't matter to you that people at school are the way that they are. But if you have Bitcoin, it fixes that. It gives you that option. I mean, unfortunately, this person did say this is the last time they'll tune into us. But I mean, I don't know where this is coming from, right? We're trying to help here.
100 people will show up as he leaves, or he or she. But that's it. But anyways, the thing that I thought of there, Rajat, is like, if you think about what fiat has done to going down this road, is like 50 years ago, one parent could work and afford more than enough. And because of fiat printing, because of the system that we're moving away from here, it forced two parents to go to work and still struggle. And they're struggling, they're fighting, they're stressed, they're living less, they're reliant more on drugs, on medications. But at the same time, now that both parents are at work, the state now decides what they're going to teach their children. Whereas before, the mom might stay home, or at least have a much bigger influence on the child's life. Whereas now that mom's at work, working 1-2 jobs, hardly seeing her kid, relying on the government to train and educate their kids with that system, that's what fiat is. The whole thing is just a sick cycle.
That's the root cause. Fake money. Fake money is what gets us where we are. I don't think, I feel like there's people who have certain beliefs, nothing that they're doing wrong, right? If you're gay, you be gay. I don't care. It's just that I feel like the way that the system is today, people are forced to do things because they have to comply because of fiat. They have to. If they don't comply, then they're going to lose their job. What are they going to, like, let's say, for example, if you're a teacher and you're told you have to add this to your curriculum, what are you going to do? Say no? You can't. It's because of fiat. Again, it's the root cause is, again, fiat.
Yep. But during that, and I think that slowly teachers are starting to say no. And as more and more people say no, as more and more people decide to spend their time and energy watching Rajat and Jor talk about Bitcoin versus Netflix, one person at a time, I think that that's how change actually happens. So if you think that you're kind of insignificant in this whole grand scheme of things, I think you're wrong. I think that if you have that belief that by speaking truth, that by making decisions with not only your wallet or your ballot at time for voting, but with your attention and what you're giving your attention to every single day, instead of spending some time watching Netflix, educate yourself, read a book, read about history. These are the small decisions that really compound into a much different world, I find anyways.
Yeah, completely agree.
Okay, well, I think we should wrap it up, Rajat. I don't want to get too political or too down any rabbit holes here. This is about Bitcoin. I think it's a good example of how Bitcoin does really shift the world, and how every root cause, or the root cause of every issue we have in society, is the ability to print money, and Bitcoin fixes that. So if you agree with our assumption that it is the root cause of everything, then yes, Bitcoin is the solution to that.
100%.
So I see a comment here. I saw it a while back. I'm sorry, guys. I tried my best. It's a lot harder with just two of us in here, because, you know, when there's three, at least I can kind of find some comments to bring up and stuff. But I wanted to stay kind of engaged there, obviously. But anyways, we did not miss the chat. C90FTW said, thanks, guys. Don't let Rajat pick the Lambo color.
It's going to be black if I pick.
Oh, I like black too.
I like the black, yeah.
5,000 sats. So he said that he doesn't use the Lightning Network often. So thank you. That's
amazing. Appreciate it.
That's nice of you. And we got a couple other zaps here. No zap is too small. So we got 100 sats from an anonymous zapper. We got 888 sats saying, these sats came from strangers on the internet. I'm just passing them along as value for value in our circular economy.
Wow. That's awesome.
15 sats, 21 sats. And our last one here, 22,222, a row of ducks. 22,222 said, great show, guys. Love, Ian E.
Amazing.
Wow.
That's so generous. People are amazing.
Yeah. It's just Bitcoin. This is a perfect representation of Bitcoin, right? Because the easy path for Maple Bitcoin would say, hey, you know what? We got these larger audiences. We're going to come together. We're going to do a show. We're going to take some sponsors. And then we would be telling you things from outside of our own beliefs. Maybe whether we agree with it or not, our voices would still be influenced by somebody else paying us. But we said, you know what? This is going to be a little bit harder, but we believe that Bitcoiners will give value back. If they're getting entertained, if they're learning anything, Bitcoiners will give some back. And that was a perfect representation today. So we had Mark with 33,000. We had BitBilly with 100,000. Wow. And we had Ian E with 22,000. Those were the fatties of the day. And Letha also was, I think 5,000 or 10.
10K.
Was it 10?
I think it was 10. Yeah. She mentioned it in the chat. I remember.
I think it was 10 too. I just don't see. Oh, sorry. Just want to make sure. 10. Yes. 10 from Letha the icon. And we got a couple more trickling in here. If you are watching the show later, you can send to that QR code right there. And if you're watching it on your phone and you can't scan it, you can also send it to Maple Bitcoin at Coinos. So I just want to say thanks. Like the comments here, I know we take a little bit of shit from people, but like comments like this, it's the reason why we keep coming back here. So thanks, Rajat. Great show. Great after chat here too. And I'll see you in Vegas. By the way, Rajat's speaking Thursday at what time? Do you know?
Thursday at, I believe, 1 p.m.
1 p.m. local time, Vegas time.
1 p.m. local time, yeah.
So I'm going to be there. So if you want to come see Rajat and I don't know how many people will be lining up to do that, but that's what the muster point I've been giving people is Rajat's chat on Thursday. So Rajat's going to be on stage with Lawrence Lepard. Pretty big deal. I'm very excited for the weekend for that specific conversation. So we're going to try to get Rajat in a Maple Bitcoin hoodie for the YouTubes.
Absolutely. It might be too hot for that, actually. I was just thinking.
I also have a t-shirt, but I don't know how well you'd be able to actually see the logo. Maybe though, because I'll probably do some zoomed in shots.
Yeah, let's see.
What size are you? Large? Medium, large?
Probably a large.
Okay.
Medium or large?
I'll pack it and we can see if it fits. I'll bring the hoodie and the shirt and hopefully we can get some Maple Bitcoin coverage on the live streams.
Sounds good.
So thanks, guys. One more time, best wishes, lots of love, lots of good vibes to Forrest's family for the birth of a first kid. Pretty big deal. So Maple Bitcoin family is growing in the next couple of days. And so we won't be here next week, but we will be here the week after, and we can't wait for that. So see some of you in Vegas. And if not, we'll see you in 2 weeks today. Thanks, Rajat.
Absolutely. Hey, before you guys leave a thumbs up before you go, just so more people see this, more people can learn more from us. We want to spread our content as far as possible.
Well said. All right. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you next time.